I'm ready, by the way, when it's time. Sounds good. Great. Hi, everybody, and very warm welcome to members of our WildFly open source community for our November 2024 WildFly mini conference. Today's event on there as well. So hopefully, as well, whether you found our third session is from Romain Police. Romain works at Red Hat for over a decade. He started as a runtimes consultant, building on expertise on JBoss EAP, so WildFly as it was, and then moved to engineering where he became the lead of the Ansible runtimes initiative, focusing on providing the best integration possible between Red Hat middleware solutions and Ansible automation platform. And then our last main presentation of the day will be given by Emmanuel Huguenet. Emmanuel works at Red Hat on the messaging subsystem and on the developer experience. But as well as those four core presentations of the day, we also have two lightning talks for you to enjoy between a couple of the sessions. And the first one will be presented by both Flavia Renan and from Remediation Chakraborty. And we'll have a second one featuring Jean-Francois Denis a bit later on today. So we've got a great set of lightning talks and presentations, and I hope you'll find that enjoyable. Okay, so just a little bit of information then on how to ask a question. As you probably will be able to see already, in the YouTube live stream, there is a chat system available. And actually, just to mention about the lightning talks, I had the order the wrong way around, and actually it's Flavia and Ranabir that are the second one, and Jean-Francois is the first one. So if you're looking in the schedule, lightning talk 1 is Jean-Francois Denis. Yeah, so back on what I'm sharing here then, you will find that there's what we'll be aware of, there is a little bit of latency between when the speaker is talking and when it ends up on the stream. So it's not going to be like one-to-one. So if you ask a question, it's not like we could expect the speaker to necessarily be able to fully interpret in the moment what it relates to. So I'm going to take a note of the questions that I see in the chat, and then at the end of the session, I'll ask the speaker to answer those questions. So essentially, questions will be at the end of each session. That's for questions that you want to have answered live. To be able to interact on a YouTube live chat, I would expect that you will need to be a subscriber of the channel. And what that at least previously meant, I'm not sure right now, but what that meant before was that you needed to have your own YouTube channel in order to be able to subscribe to our channel. So you just need to be aware that to be able to interact with the chat, it may require you to be a subscriber of the channel, and to be able to be a subscriber in general, you may need your own YouTube channel. But hopefully, that won't be too much of a problem for people who are here. If a question comes to you after the talk is finished, but still today, don't worry, just put it in the chat still, and we'll try and come back to it in the closing chat, which is at the last session of the day. There's also other ways that you can follow up on any questions that you might have, and I'll just come on to that now. So this is the last slide that I've got before we get started today. This is where you can go to find more information after the event. On the WildFly website, you'll be able to find a lot of information about our project. But as well, you should be able to find a way to interact with us via and the project via the Zulip message system. And that would probably be one of the more interactive ways to reach members of the WildFly development team and other members of the WildFly community. I'm going to put a link in the chat for the YouTube live event with a link to a channel within the Zulip chat that we have for today's discussions. But clearly, if your topic is you know, more general in nature and you have some interesting question about WildFly, then, you know, just somewhere in the Zulip chat, I'm sure you'll be able to find an appropriate place for it. So that's a really great route to reach us and our project team, and we'll look forward to hearing from you on Zulip. To kind of follow some of our social channels to get the updates from the project team on how things are, you know, what's new with the project and things like that. We have 3 social media channels that you might be interested to follow, depending on which social media systems you prefer to use. We have something on Fostodon, we have something on X, and as I mentioned earlier in the call, we also have a LinkedIn. It's a company that is the URL and the system is, but yeah, a kind of a group space that you can reach the WildFly team. So yeah, those are the places that you can reach us. So I'm seeing like that's the like we're expecting Harold to come on stream in a couple of minutes. I'm just gonna introduce his talk, but I'm just gonna have a look in the it looks like we haven't got any questions in the chat. And I will now introduce Harold. So if Harold, you'd like to come on stream at all? Ah, great. Hi, Harold. Okay, so Harold's going to be presenting an initial overview of the next generation management console. Although it's still in the early stages of development, we will be greatly value your feedback and would appreciate hearing your thoughts on it. I'm going to go ahead and stop my sharing, and you know, don't feel like, Harold, you need to start right now. You know, you're welcome to wait to your slot and you can get prepared, and I will stop my sharing and I'll let you get yourself set up, and I think it'll probably be just about right then. But just bear with me as I stop sharing this. So yeah, if you want to share yours. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, ready whenever you are to share your screen.
Okay, thanks, Tom. For
Stefano will probably need to pin some stuff on screen. So yeah, just anyway. Yeah, thank you. I'll go off stream now. Thank you.
Okay, Howard. Thanks, Tom. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so welcome everybody to my talk about the next-gen management console. So in the next half an hour or so, I would like to introduce what we are currently working on regarding the management console. Some quick words about me. My name is Harald Pehl. I'm working as a developer at Red Hat. I'm part of the WildFly team, and most of the time I work on the management capabilities of WildFly. And in particular, I'm the lead of the management console, which is also known as Hub. So what I would like to talk about today is some background why we are working on a new version of the management console, some words about the architecture behind it, and the main part of my talk should be a demo to show you all what is currently already available. And then and at the end, I'm sharing some links how you can get involved. I really would appreciate your feedback, your thoughts about the new architecture, the new features. And at the end, I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, so yeah, so let's talk about the motivation why we're currently working on a new version of the management console. So the fact is that the current code base is pretty old. Also, looking at the repository and the Git history, I see the very first commit is almost, or yeah, more than 9 years ago. So also we really work on the code base every day. Yeah, the code is really somewhat old, and this is also true for the dependencies. Some of them are soon to become end of life. Regarding the user interface, the current version is based on Patternfly 3. That's an UX library, an open source UX library sponsored by Red Hat, and the latest release of Patternfly is already on 6. So that's another reason for the move to a next-gen management console. And finally, the current version of the management console is shipped with WildFly. So that is probably the version you all use and know. But we would like also to have something which is usable for the cloud and especially for OpenShift. So to manage your WildFly instances running on OpenShift. And the idea is to have a common code base, which is then usable for both versions of the management console, the one which is shipped with WildFly, and another one which is usable for instances running on OpenShift. Yeah, so speaking about the architecture, so you might know that the current version of the management console is based on Google Web Toolkit, also known as Squid. It's implemented in Java. Currently, we are using Java 11. And we decided to stick with most of the architecture. So we decided to stick with Java. The main reason is that the code base is really big, and it's easier to migrate the existing code base to reuse all the Java code, and so that's why we keep this as the basis. What we do is we switch the Google Web Toolkit with a new technology, a new toolkit, that J2CL, which stands for Java to Closure. That's a framework which is actually a transpiler, which transpiles the Java code to Java script, and that it's based on the Closure compiler. And then we have a couple of libraries we're using. One which I would like to mention is the CDI implementation for the browser. And then we have a couple of other libraries we're using. One is Elemento, which makes it easier to work with a DOM API in the browser. And then finally, we have a library, Patternfly Java, which is the Java implementation of the Patternfly components that we're using in the new architecture. And the build system is a mix of Maven, Parcel, and NPM. So here you see a quick overview of the architecture. At the very bottom, we have the toolkit, which transpiles our Java code to JavaScript. And then there's Patternfly Java and Elemento at the very bottom. And the yellow pieces, these are the main code base. So there are modules to work with DMR, encoding, and operations, and things like that. We have library or a module which is called Flow, which cares about promises and asynchronous management operations. We have a very important block is the Meta library, which deals with the management model and the metadata of the management model. And this is heavily used to automatically generate the user interface, which we will see in the demo later on. So before going to the demo, I quickly want to highlight some new features. The first one is a dashboard we want to have. So right now, if you start up the management console, you see a welcome screen with some static information, some texts and some descriptions. We want to replace that with a dashboard. And the idea of the dashboard should be to have a quick overview of what's going on in WildFly and in the server. The information presented here is divided in multiple cards. And I have an initial version which I want to show you, but I encourage everybody to give feedback, to give their thoughts, what they would like to have on the dashboard. Therefore, I created an issue on GitHub, which we could use as a discussion and to collect ideas, what you would like to see on the dashboard. Here's a screenshot which shows a very initial version. We will see that live in a minute. And finally, another highlight is the so-called model browser. So right now, or in the current version of the management console, we have there's also already a management model browser, which gives you a full overview of the resources available in WildFly. And this has been greatly enhanced in the new version. So there are new features. For instance, you can search for resources now. You have filters, better expression supports, and you can execute each and every operation which is available in WildFly. This is also will be a part of the presentation. So here's a quick screenshot for the new management model, and this UI will make up most of the new version. So the UI elements to view and edit and also add new resources which are already implemented in the management model browser will then also become available in other parts of the management console. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right into the new version. First screen which you see here is a screen to connect to a running WildFly instance. This is because the demo here is just the management console itself, which is right now not shipped as part of WildFly, but running on its own. And in order to do something useful, you have to connect to a running instance. So that's why you're getting this screen. You can have a list of predefined connections. Right now this is empty. So let's add a connection here, give it a name, and you have to give it a host and a port. So I'm running a standalone instance on port 9934. I can check if it's working, and it seems to be working. So I can add that connection. It will remember this in the local storage of the browser, and then I can hit connect to connect to the WildFly, to the application server. So first thing you notice is the new dashboard. So as already mentioned, there are multiple cards showing different information of the WildFly application server, like the version, the stability level, the operation mode. Further down, you get information about the host and the JVM. And since we are running, we are using the microprofile health subsystem, you also see the health checks here. And if you would have deployments, you would see them. You would see them as well. So as I already mentioned, this is very much work in progress. So I'm curious to hear about what else could be usable or could be useful for this dashboard, and this should evolve until the final version of the management console has been released. So deployments, configuration, runtime, that's currently empty, so that's not yet implemented. But the more interesting part is the management model browser, which is now in its own top-level tab. And here you can browse the complete management model of the WildFly application server. So on the left-hand side, you have the tree of the resources. So you can click on these photo-like symbols, which will give you then the child resources. And in case there's nothing in that, you get a visual feedback. So you can drill down to the different parts of the management model. For instance, go to the EE subsystem, see if there's anything else, and so on. And at the right-hand side, you see the details of the selected resource in the read-only mode, and then have the ability to refresh, to reset, which is not yet currently implemented, or to edit the resource, which I will show you in a minute. But first of all, I want to show you a new feature, which is to find a resource. So you can click on that icon, and that will give you a dialog to search for a given resource. So here you have, you can specify the route where you want to search. So this is the last node you have selected. So we want to clear that out for the moment. You can exclude specific parts of the management model you're not interested in. That's by default core service. You could add here anything else. And then you give a scope and a comparison mode. The scope is defines where you want to search, and that is either in the complete address or only the type, the resource type, or in the name of the resource. And another option is to how you want to search, and that is whether you want to match exactly, or if it's or if the term should contain in the address. So for instance, let's search for HTTPS. So if you hit enter, you see there are 3 resources which match our search term, and they are given here as links. So we can quickly jump to the HTTP listener, for instance. This will then open up in the tree and give the details of the different attributes of the HTTPS listener. So we have quite a lot of attributes here. 56 attributes in total, and there comes the next feature, quite handy, that is the resource filters. So we can filter the resources for type, for instance. So you can say, let's just want to see the numerics or the booleans, and maybe the strings. Or just let's keep it short and just the numerics. So we have 27 attributes, and we can filter by status, whether it's defined or not defined. We only want to see the we want to filter out the deprecated ones, and finally we can filter for the storage or the access type. So I just want to see the configuration ones, and if that's not enough, we could give a name, and then filter out the others which don't match. Or if you want to reset and see everything else, every attribute, we can just click on clear filter. So this is the new filter mechanism. And then in the read-only view, there are a new things I quickly want to mention. First is that we have the attribute description for each attribute as a pop-up information here. So we can click on the label, and that will give exactly the description of this attribute. We see whether it supports expressions, for instance, the default value, what kind of restart policy this attribute, if this attribute has changed, and so on. And for instance, let me give an example of disallowed values. So we see if the attribute has different values, we can quickly see what values are allowed for this attribute. And then we have these little hints at the end of some attributes, and these are the references. As you might know, in the WildFly management model, we have the idea of capabilities, and these capabilities can be published by specific resources and then consumed by other resources. So we have links between different resources. And this is part of the management model description, and the new version makes use of this information and give hints or show this information in the management console. For instance, the socket binding is defined by a resource HTTPS, and we can see that this resource is at socket binding and so on and so on. Same is true for the SSL context. And clicking on the link will jump to the specific resource, and this goes on. For instance, here we have the key manager, which is another reference. And finally, the key manager has a key store, so we can also click on that and have the key store now, and can make modifications or can look up something. And if you're want to go back, there's a back and forth mechanism here in the management model tree, so you can go back to the last visited resource. And go back to where we have started, to the HTTP listener, for instance. Okay, so another feature I quickly want to show is to add and modify resources. So, for instance, let's try to add a resource. For that, go to the root resource again, collapse the tree, and then, for instance, we have here in the management resource, let's remove this resource for a moment so that we can add it again. Now, if we look at the service, you see there are some grayed out resources, and these are resources which are not yet, which do not yet exist. So we can click on it, and there's a hint to add this resource, which will give you then the dialog to fill in the necessary, the required attributes. For that, just the max history, which is defaults to 10. You can give it another value like 15, add the resource, and then we have this resource created. We can take a look at the resource. And what is also new in this version is the operations tab. So at the operations tab, you see all the available operations, and you have the ability to execute the operations. For this, there's only one operation to execute, and that is the list changes at operation. The add and the remove operation, they are listed here, but they are not available to execute here, because to add resources, you have other means, and to remove them, you have this remove button here. Another thing to mention here in the operations tab is that by default, all the global operations, you might know, they are omitted here, so that you see at a glance what is available for this specific resource. But you can, of course, show the global operation, and then we'll give you all the operations you might know, like a query, read attribute, read children names, and so on and so on. but by default this is omitted. So we can execute this operation, for instance, and if the operation do not have any required parameters, it is executed right away, and the result is given here in this scrollable area. So we see the list changes operation gives us the last changes to the management model. Other operations which do need an input parameter, for instance, if we go to the root resource and take a look here at the operations, and there should be something to resume the server. The resume operation do not have parameters, but I think the suspend, the suspend, that is actually what I would like to show you. That is requires a timeout, and we can give the timeout here in this dialog. All right, so let's then do another demo how to modify a resource. For that, let's go to into the logging subsystem. There should be something. There should be a file handler. That's here. And take a look at the data of this resource. And then we can switch to the, we click on the edit button to modify the resource. That will switch over to the form where you can modify the different parts of the resource. And here you see these dollar signs, which will switch to the expression mode. So when an attribute supports expressions, it comes in two variants. One is the native one, which is visible here, so you can flip the state, the Boolean state, or for instance, the log level is another example. You can use the select mode to select a different log level, but you can also switch to the expression mode, and then this changes into a text entry field, and then you could enter some expression. Of course, this expression should be valid and should a specific format. But if we type in something like who with a default value of info, this should be accepted. And if you try to save it, you see this changes then into an expression. Another feature I would like to show you is that's a good example here for this resource as well. So in the attributes tab, you have a detailed description of all the attributes, and if some of these attributes are kind of nested complex attributes, you can drill down here and see what's inside this object. And this is also available or visible here in the resource itself. So these complex attributes, they are split into the object and the attribute part, and you can get the descriptions for both the object and the attribute itself. All right, so what I want to quickly show here as well is to execute the operation, which makes sense, for instance, here on the log file. You see here you have the operation to read the log file. You could execute that one and then get a view of the last 10 lines, for instance, of the log file. Here in the management model, you also have this breadcrumb at the very top, which is quite handy. You can copy the address to the clipboard. So clicking on that will copy over the address in the clipboard, and then you could switch over to the CLI or to other management clients and then paste that in. And this is also useful, for instance, if you're here at the very root again, there's another option, not only to find resources, but if you want to, if you know exactly where to go, you can click this icon, then paste in the link, the address, and then it will go right away to the resource. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to show for the current version. So let's go back to the presentation, and just want to give some quick information about how to get involved. So the code for the current, for the new version of the management console is available on GitHub. So there's a repository which contains the code, some instructions how to check out, how to compile, and how to build it on your own if you're interested. The version you currently see here in the demo is also available as a container on Quay.io. So there's a link in the repository how to use that and how to start that. We have a contribution guide. As I already mentioned, there's an issue we could use for the discussion about the new dashboard. And finally, we have the WildFly Google group, or there's an, if you're in Solib, there's a channel for HAL as well, where you can reach out and give feedback. Okay, so thanks for your interest, and now I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Harold. I'm back on stream here as well. So we didn't get any questions in the YouTube live chat. What I will go ahead and do, and before I do that, just thank you very much for the presentation, Harold. It was great to have a demo, and it worked very well. So that's no demo effect here. It worked very well. So congratulations, and thank you very much for that. Yeah, I've got a few links that I'm going to put in the YouTube chat, and I'll do that shortly after I introduce Jean-Francois to join us in a bit. But yeah, I've got some links to where people can go to like continue the discussion from today if things were to come to them after words that they want to chat about the specific content. And we've also got a link on like the HAL's channel in Zulip as well, in case people want to follow up, you know, and just participate more broadly in the HAL project afterwards. And I've also got a link to the HAL Foundation issue that you referred to before. And I know that as well, if people wanted to find some, within the contributing guide, there's some information about how to find good first issues if people are interested to start with HAL. So I can see that there's, you know, a number of issues there for people to even get started with some of those triaged issues that are suitable, hopefully, as a first issue. But yeah, thank you very much for your presentation, Harold. I'll go ahead and pop those links in the YouTube chat now. But as I say, I'm not seeing any questions, some compliments in the chat there, so that's good. And yeah, I'll invite you to leave the stream for now then, Harold, and I'll invite Jean-Francois to come online. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, my pleasure.
Thank you. And just while we're waiting for Jean-Francois to join us on stream, I will put some links into the some information into the YouTube chat. Kind of thinking that might get, I think that one was going to get cropped. So let's put that in. Oh, hi, Jean-Francois. I've got multiple video feeds. I can see you here now. I'll not paste them into the YouTube chat, then I'll do that once once he gets started.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, Jean-Francois. So obviously you're here for our first lightning talk of the day, and going to give us an update on the current status of the WildFly Glow project and the demo showing its integration with OpenShift. Another demo, I hope it works out well for you too. Yeah, I guess I'll leave the stream and I'll let you
Thank you, Tom.
go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So the title of this lightning talk is WildFly Provisioning Made Easy. So in 5 minutes, I'm going to try to show you what you can do easily with WildFly Glow. So, but perhaps before to jump into information on the project, I want to highlight the fact that we have a Zulip channel, WildFly Zulip channel for the conference, and we have a topic dedicated to this lightning talk. So if you want that we exchange on the topic, feel free to ask for more. These presentation slides actually are in the topic. So if you want to read it by yourself and then ask questions, feel free. So in 5 minutes, what I wanted to tell is WildFly Glow, why, what, and how. So why this project is because when provisioning WildFly, we want to reduce the complexity of such provisioning process. So what I mean by provisioning is right-sizing your server for your application. Do not provision, do not install more than what your application actually requires. That's the key of all this provisioning, and Glow should make it easier for you. So Glow stands for Galleon Layers Output from WAR. So it is going to output some Galleon information. So Galleon is the underlying technology that WildFly uses for its provisioning. It doesn't just work from WAR, it's just a name, a nice name. It also works with jar and EAR. So how does it work? Starting from your deployments, WildFly Glow is going to scan, analyze the bytecode, and find out what are the Galleon feature packs and layers that your application requires. It comes with some tooling, a command line tool that I'm going to demonstrate that goes beyond this discovery. You can provision, even deploy to OpenShift. This is what I will showcase. And we have also an integration in the WildFly Maven plugin. So when you are building your application using Maven, at the same time, you can ask for provisioning of a server that will just contain what your application deployment needs. So that is the integration into the WildFly Maven plugin. Okay, so we are going to jump to the demonstration. So I have downloaded locally WildFly Glow 1.1.1 final. It contains in the examples directory todobackend.war. It's an application that comes from the quick start. It exists. If you go to the WildFly quick start, you will find it. But what is interesting with this application is that it requires a data source. It requires, obviously, to connect to a database. And we are going to see that from the WildFly Glow command line, we are going to bind everything automatically. The server will connect to the Postgres server, and everything is going to be deployed to OpenShift. So let's jump to the demo. I'm going to copy the command line. So I want to show that I'm connected to a cluster with no resources. And then I'm going to pass this command line. But prior to run it, actually, I am going to explain what it is going to do, but I want to remove this add-on. I will explain that I want Glow to discover everything without me providing him any hints. So we are scanning the WAR and we want to provision to OpenShift. Let's see what's happened. So Glow is scanning, and it has discovered a set of feature pack, a set of Galilean layers, but it has also identified an error. It says that there is an unbound data source. There is a missing piece of information. It can't fully provision a server that would fully answer my application needs. So it is suggesting a set of add-ons, and some of them, as we can see, MariaDB, MySQL, PostgreSQL, have a deployer. So it means that Glow will be able to deploy on OpenShift the associated server that will actually persist the data. So let's use PostgreSQL. And now let's try to provision again. Okay, so this time we can see that an extra feature pack has been found. This is the one that contains the PostgreSQL data source. I will skip that the error has been fixed. We are happy. Important things, interesting things for the demo is what is happening on OpenShift. So Glow connected to the cluster. It found the deployer for the PostgreSQL server, and it deployed PostgreSQL. A lot of, on OpenShift, a lot of configuration items are based on environment variables. And our feature packs and data source can be configured thanks to environment variable. So WildFly Glow is going to use these variables with some default values. So he's able to set port, database name, password, and user as default value just to get you started. So really see WildFly Glow as a way to quickly get onboarded with provisioning OpenShift deployment. So it will WildFly Glow will take opinionated decisions, but at least it will help you to have something to get started. Okay, so we can see that the application is built. So we are building everything on OpenShift. You don't need Maven, you don't need Podman, nor Docker locally on your laptop. Everything is done on the cluster. Okay, so everything has been built and deployed. Let me copy the root to the application and switch to the topology. So we can see that we have now PostgreSQL that is running and the to-do backend application that is also running. Let's access to the root. And we can see it's not very impressive. It's an empty list. We have no to-do action item, and that's very good. Okay, so I'm back to presenting. Okay, so the status of the project, we are currently, as I said, 1.1.1 final. The quick start, I think it's starting WildFly 34, are now making use of Glow. So if you want to see examples of the WildFly Maven plugin with this discovery capability enabled, I suggest that you have a look to all our quick starts. And in terms of integration into the WildFly Maven plugin, make sure to use 5.0.1 final as the minimal version. We have some future development, such as support for Jakarta data source definition to discover defined data source. And we are also enlarging the scope of discovered feature packs by introducing what we call an incubating space in which developers that plan to develop outside of the WildFly development process some feature packs, but that could be of interest. We plan to open this space for them to be registered and discovered by Glow. A bunch of resources. As I said, you can access to the slides in the Zulip topic with the project, some blog posts, and more. And that's it. I'm done. I should be inside the 5 minutes to present you Glow. Thank you very much. Tom, do we have some question in the...
We don't have any questions in the YouTube chat. I have just placed a link in there to the Zulip thread that you were talking about earlier, where people can like discuss the content of the lightning talk with you later. But thank you very much for presenting your lightning talk for us, Jean-Francois. Greatly appreciated. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, nothing in there's nothing in the YouTube chat there, so I'll invite you to disconnect your presentation and so on. And
goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left before we're going to get started with our next presentation, but not so many. So I think I'll just take this opportunity just to mention that the something that I didn't mention before is that we have feedback forms for the main presentation events. The event's main presentation, so not the lightning talks, but the main presentations of the event. And in the YouTube chat, you should have seen a message go by which had a feedback form for Harold's presentation, earlier presentation. So please do consider completing that form to let Harold and us know how you felt the session went. And yeah, if you keep watching the chat, you'll also hopefully receive links for further talks, including our next one, which is from Brian. So yeah, there'll also be a feedback form for the whole event that I share at the closing session of the event. Not so, like, it won't be an opportunity to provide the feedback on those presentations. Again, hopefully you can use the feedback form per session, but there will be a place to give your feedback on the overall event and your impressions of it. So we appreciate you completing those when those forms go out. Okay, so we're getting quite close to time now, so I'll invite Brian when he's ready to join me on stream. And we'll just give him some moments to connect in. Or to join us. Okay. Once again, I am looking at probably the wrong thing. I've got the YouTube chat open as well, so I don't know how much lag there is, but I apologize. Hi, Brian. Cool. Okay, so I know that you're going to be given, I understand you're going to be given as an overview of what's coming in Jakarta EE11 and WildFly's plans for supporting it. So hopefully that'll be of interest to many of our people that are joining us on stream today. We think we're close enough to time that I think we can let you get started. So thank you very much in advance for your presentation, and I'll keep an eye. I'll let you know if we have any questions in the chat after the call, but otherwise it's over to you. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, Tom, and welcome everybody. I really appreciate everybody joining the mini conference. I think these are great things, and I'm very happy it's a new tradition we started this year, and hopefully continue for many, many more times. So I'm Brian Stansbury. I'm the project lead for WildFly, and Tom mentioned before, I'm also the architect, principal architect for JBoss EAP. I'm a longtime JBosser. I've got my JBoss shirt on here. That dates back to 2005, maybe. I'm very happy to be here. What I'm going to be basically talking about today is Jakarta EE11, what's new in Jakarta EE11, and particularly a focus on 3 specs: concurrency, persistence, and Jakarta data. And then, what our plans are, what's the current status, and what our plans are around integrating that into WildFly. But before I dig into that, I just wanted to mention to everybody, today we're launching, basically by me presenting this slide is the initial launch, a Google survey, Google form-based survey that we're doing called the WildFly Technology Interest Survey. And what that's all about is we want to, basically we're looking for information from our users. It's an anonymous survey about what various technologies you're using in WildFly, what interest you have in different technologies, either new or upcoming technologies. There's a lot of things, as you'll see in this presentation, there's been changes in Jakarta, things added, things removed. Beyond that, there's microprofile, there's other technologies that are of interest out there that aren't part of standards. And we're just very interested in hearing what our users think about those things so that, we can use that to guide our decisions about what we do with WildFly. So I very much encourage you to go ahead and fill out that form. I'll be socializing this via the other normal channels like the dev list and the user forum, Google group, and X and Mastodon, all those ways later today. Okay, so let's get it started into Jakarta EE11. Just first, just basic overview information. A key one people probably have a lot of interest in. I don't determine the date when EE11 is going to ship, so this is just my personal expectation. But it's looking like EE11 is going to be completed, I would say, in Q1 2025. There's still a possibility it will finish before the end of Q4 this year. But I think it's looking more like Q1 2025 is a more likely date when EE11 would go GA. That's just my opinion again. Hopefully earlier in the quarter. Okay. However, EE is allowed to produce the individual profiles, the core profile, the web profile. Those can be actually released independent of the entire full platform. And what that basically means is core profile can be and likely will be released shortly. It's basically done. All the specs are done. The TCK is done. It needs to go through some final little procedural stuff to be able to be released, but it may be out very shortly. And when it comes out, WildFly Preview 34 should be a compatible implementation. We pass all the TCKs and we filed the certification forms you need to do to be certified as a compatible implementation. So we're very happy about that. And I think it is nice that EE is able to release pieces like this, like core profile, more quickly than the full platform. That's a good sign of things in the EE community. The SE requirements for EE11 are the minimum is going to be SE17. So SE11 will not be supported in a EE11 environment. So the minimum is SE17. But it's a requirement of EE11 that the TCK has to allow implementations who want to certify in SE21 to certify in that. So an implementation can certify on both or one or the other. And the intention is that when WildFly certifies an EE11 compatible server, we'll certify in both. That is definitely what we've done with the core profile with WildFly Preview 34. Okay, just high-level information on what's coming. EE11 is a big thing. It incorporates actually 32 specifications in EE11. This includes a new one, Jakarta data, which I'll be talking about quite a bit later on. Then of all the various specs, maybe 18 of them have changes. Mostly it's pretty small changes. But there's a few that are more significant, concurrency and persistence in particular that I'll be talking about. And then finally, there's 13 specs that are completely unchanged from EE10. So if you're using those specs, there's nothing you need to. It's completely the same as existing. However, EE itself has pruned 5 specs, and I'll be talking about what that means. 4 of them are in the web services space, and then there's another one called Jakarta Managed Beans that have actually been removed from the platform. It doesn't mean the specs no longer exist and they're no longer usable, but they're no longer incorporated in the platform. So if somebody wants to be a compatible platform implementation, they don't have to provide those specifications. Just as an aside, WildFly, since I believe 32, also provides preview stability support for the Jakarta MVC specification, which is a Jakarta spec, but it's not part of Jakarta EE itself. So Jakarta has specifications that are standalone that are not included in the Jakarta EE platform. Okay, just a quick thing, just FYI, a huge effort that's been happening behind the scenes with Jakarta EE is a massive refactoring of the EE TCKs. Basically, the EE TCKs are tens of thousands of tests, so it's a huge piece of software, and it's all based on 20-year-old technology, test framework technology, you know, from the 2000s. And this is kind of a problem because having such a huge test suite, relying on such old technology, it is becoming a barrier to innovation within Jakarta. You know, it's hard to find people who are even able to maintain the TCK, which makes just normal operations, doing new releases and things more difficult. And it's also a barrier to contributions. You know, if you want to contribute some new thing and you need to add some new tests, and suddenly, oh, I have to spend 3 weeks learning this old technology, maybe you're not going to do that. So it's definitely a barrier to innovation in Jakarta. So it's all being refactored with a lot of help from WildFly community contributors Scott Marlowe and Scott Stark, both of whom are longstanding contributors to WildFly. And it's all being refactored to move to an Carlene-based framework. So that's just something going on behind the scenes to be aware of. And thank you to Scott and Scott for their work on that. Okay, before I get to the nice new things, I'm going to talk a little bit about things that are breaking in EE11. It's always a topic of interest to, particularly in EAP, we always think a lot about, okay, what's breaking? How are we going to deal with breaking changes? Because, you know, people don't like, our users don't like to deal with breaking changes, so we always want to be aware. So there's a few things. First, you know, one is that SE11 is no longer supported, so people need to move on to SE17 or later, which I think that's a wise idea anyway. So I think that's okay. There are some minor breaking changes in various specs, which is typically of the nature of, you know, there's been some various APIs that have long been deprecated and they've finally been removed in a handful of specs. I don't think those things are particularly significant problem either, I don't expect. Because most of the time when they've deprecated something, there's long been a replacement for it anyways. It's not like there's no alternative that you can move to. But also there's a couple bigger things. First off, relates to the security manager. So EE11 will no longer support running with the security manager. Basically, the TCKs for E10 includes lots of tests that you have to execute with the security manager. Those are all being removed from the TCK for EE11. So using a security manager is no longer required. And not only is it no longer required, but because it's not required, various, you know, EE API and implementation libraries, they're carrying out a code that allows them to work properly in the presence of a security manager. They're tearing out the code that you know, says to the security manager, oh, it's okay if this code executes. It's got privileges. Don't reject it. So now if you try to run these libraries with the security manager enabled, you start getting permission problems. Because of this, WildFly Preview, which is, you know, targeting E11 at this point, will fail to boot if you enable the security manager. And the same thing will happen once standard WildFly provides support for E11. If you're running an E11 variant of standard WildFly, it will fail to boot if you turn on security manager. This, in a way, is just previewing what's coming in the entire Java ecosystem, because I believe just a couple days ago this week, there was an early access release of Java SE24 where they basically removed support for enabling the security manager. So starting with SE24, if you try to turn on the security manager, will fail. You're not allowed to turn on security manager anymore. So, you know, EE11, by disabling this, is actually doing the general enterprise Java ecosystem a favor. But this is certainly a big change in enterprise Java. So we'd love to hear from you in chat and Zulip and the forums via the feedback forum that I talked about earlier. We'd love to hear from you about, you know, if running security manager is important to you. Okay, next kind of breaking change, although not so much for WildFly. There's been 5 specifications removed from EE from the EE platform. 4 of them are in the web services area. They're kind of all related to each other. JAXB, what used to be known as JAXB, used to be JAXWS. These are all no longer required as part of the EE platform. So an implementation can certify as EE11 compatible without implementing these. However, in WildFly, we know our users are interested in these. We have lots of users that use these. The specifications are still valid. They still have valid implementations that are being developed. Particularly Apache CXF provides XML web services. So we absolutely intend to continue supporting the specifications. So this changes for WildFly users shouldn't have any impact. There's also a spec that people might not even be aware of anymore called Jakarta Managed Beans, which is basically it's a bean technology that predates CDI. And it's basically long ago been superseded by CDI beans. So in EE11, they basically removed that technology. So I'm just curious, again, in the YouTube chat or on the feedback forum, I'm just curious if anybody's using the managed bean annotation is basically how you're using this. I'm curious if anybody's using that on our EE10 compatible implementations of WildFly. The reason I'm interested is in theory, we could continue to support this. Technically, I don't think it's very difficult. But before we would do that, I'd want to be aware that there's actually people who want that, because otherwise, it would require continue to test things and all that kind of stuff. And that would be an ongoing burden I'd rather get rid of if nobody actually wants it. Okay, so moving into the more positive things as opposed to breaking changes. Just a general theme of things that are coming in EE11. One general theme is support for Java records, which came into Java SE, I believe, in SE 14. And since EE11 has a SE 17 baseline, now that can become part of the specifications now that we've moved on from having to support SE 11. So there's 3 specifications that have incorporated support for it. That's the expression language. So you can, when you're using expressions and, for example, in JSPs and things like that, you can earn in your output. You can refer to record types. In Jakarta persistence, you can use a record type can be used basically as an embeddable class within your entities. A record cannot be an entity itself, but you might have an entity and then one of its fields is a record of a record type, including in the ID field. Okay. And then finally, Jakarta validation also supports this. I believe, in fact, I know Hibernate Validator already supported this, so I don't think this is anything new. But I think the main thing in EE11 is they've clarified in the spec that records are supported. They've added TCK tests and all those good things. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the various specifications that are of more interest. Excuse me. The first one being Jakarta concurrency, the 3.1 release. There's a few things in there. A simple one is now if you can inject concurrency resources like your managed executors, your scheduled executors, those kind of things. You can use add inject to inject them into other beans as opposed to having to rely on the old school Java EE resource annotation, which is just more convenient, I would say. There's also the Java util concurrent flow API that's part of Java FE. It's a way of basically helping to do reactive type programming with Java SE. And all the various contextual invocation points that Jakarta concurrency supports. So the ways of defining tasks that should be run with Jakarta concurrency, where for example, your security context, your transaction context, all those kind of things need to be associated with the calling thread. Those are all contextual invocation points. A classic one being runnable.run or callable.call. Well, now the concurrency APIs also support the flow API classes as contextual invocation points. And finally, there's a concept called an asynchronous method, which is a CDI bean. You can annotate a method as asynchronous, and then when that method is invoked, it actually gets executed asynchronously using the backing Java concurrency services. So that's long been part of concurrency, but they've added now the notion you can annotate such an asynchronous method also with a schedule, which then causes the method to be invoked on a schedule. So it's a nice new feature. The big thing I wanted to talk about in concurrency 3.1 though is support for virtual threads. What this means, there's been a new virtual attribute that's been added to all the annotations you can use to define concurrency services. So at managed executor definition is a annotation you use to configure and define a managed executor service. They have similar things for scheduled executors and thread factories. They all now support a virtual attribute on the annotation. And if you set that to true, that tells the container that if it wants to, it can run tasks on a virtual thread if it's supported. Now, if the server is running on SE less than 21, it won't be supported because virtual threads are not supported by SE. So what does this mean? This is going to be a quick primer on virtual threads. It's a big topic, but I'll touch on it very, very lightly. Virtual threads are essentially something new in Java SE 21 that's aimed at improving performance on blocking I/O. Currently, and if you're not using a virtual thread or throughout the history of Java, all threads are actually backed up by a native OS thread, and which is a fairly expensive resource. And then if you if you do any kind of blocking work on that thread, you're essentially blocking the native thread. Virtual threads are basically a new kind of thread, a new actually subclass of thread that behind the scenes Java SE, actually any task you run on a virtual thread, so maybe a runnable, it all executes on a native thread. But when the virtual thread call reaches a blocking point, the JVM recognizes, oh, this is a blocking point, basically unmounts the virtual thread from the native thread, finds some other virtual thread that's ready to work, mounts that to the native thread, and then the native thread continues executing without basically blocking, waiting for whatever you're blocking IO or something. And then when the blocking task finishes, the JVM gets a signal and it realizes, okay, now I can restart, I can continue on off this virtual thread. And when it's able to, it mounts that virtual thread back onto a native thread. So this has the potential of improving performance quite a bit when executing blocking tasks, because this whole mounting and unmounting process is a lot lighter weight than what theory should be, much lighter weight than what goes on with like stopping a native thread, context switching everything, all that kind of work. This seems like a good fit for Jakarta concurrency, where you're trying to do an asynchronous task. And probably the reason you're doing asynchronous is you might be doing something blocking and you don't want to wait for it. So that's why they've added support in Jakarta concurrency. However, I think it's important for people to be aware that I think this is very much still a maturing technology. Even though it's in Java SE 21, it's still a maturing technology. So anybody who wants to use virtual threads in Jakarta concurrency or anywhere else needs to be very, very careful. First off, at this point in general, it's not certain that performance using virtual threads would be worse than using native threads if you're running workloads on a well-optimized thread pool and all that kind of thing, like we have in WildFly and Quarkus, places like that. We all have very well optimized threading technology and IO technology, and it's not at all certain that a virtual thread would be better performing. More significant though is there's code concepts like using the synchronized block that can cause problems, where the virtual thread can't actually be unmounted from the native thread, so the native thread ends up blocking. And if that happens, the native threads used for virtual threads are, they're kind of a limited resource. There's not very many of them. So if you end up blocking them all, well, certainly it can have a perf impact, but if you end up blocking them all, you can even deadlock. So this is certainly a concern, because any kind of serious application code calls into all kinds of libraries, and all libraries for decades now have been using synchronized. This is something that they should largely be fixing in Java SE 24, and then which means it'll be fixed in SE 25. But at this point, it's definitely still a major issue. And then finally, there's a similar thing related to using thread locals, which can have poor memory performance and even like large scale very large scale memory performance problems. So anyways, if somebody wants to use virtual threads, test very, very carefully. So where do we stand with this one? So currently, WildFly Preview 34 exposes the concurrency 3.81 API, but at this point, the backing implementation is still concurrency 3.0. So these things I've talked about are not present yet in WildFly Preview. I believe this will be the same case for WildFly Preview 35. I don't think we're going to be upgrading this particular component. We'll see. So hopefully more, I think we expect for WildFly Preview 36, we'll bring in support for concurrency 3.1. Okay, next is Jakarta persistence. And this is actually, I think Gavin King said it's one of the biggest releases for Jakarta persistence in many, many years. And if you get the slide deck, I've got a link to the change log for what was changed in Jakarta persistence 3.2. You can see there's a lot of stuff in there. I also encourage you to have a look at an excellent blog that Gavin wrote about it back in April, I believe it was. There's all sorts of stuff he talks about in there, and even that's only a subset of what changed. I'm going to cover a few items here. One of them I already mentioned that now you can use Java records in Jakarta persistence, so that's a big new thing. Other interesting things. A nice one is now you can use programmatic configuration of your persistence unit as an alternative to using XML or persistence XML file. So here there's a little code snippet showing an example, new persistence configuration, and then you do various API calls to configure it, and then create energy manager factory, and now you've got your energy manager factory. So that's a nice thing. Excuse me. Another thing you can do, I think this sounds particularly nice for things like unit testing or integration testing. There's a new schema manager interface that's available from the Energy Manager Factory, and that allows you to create, drop, validate, truncate schemas. So the example here, use the Energy Manager Factory, get schema manager and create. And behind the scenes, that'll create all your tables. This is something that people often do when they're doing unit testing. Okay, I need to set up all my tables in my database. So very simple way now to do that. And similarly, there's a truncate method, which basically doesn't, I believe it doesn't actually delete all the tables and all that stuff. The drop method does that, but instead it just removes all the data. So again, you're writing unit tests. Okay, I need to clear all my data so I can move on to the next method. Very nice and convenient. Okay, the next general topic I want to mention is the concept of what I'm referring to as type safe named things, which is very vague, I realize as I read that title. But what this is about is further uses of something that's existed in Jakarta persistence for a long time called the static meta model. And basically what the static meta model is the ability to use an annotation processor when you're building your application, and the annotation processor, scans things like all your entity annotations, things like that, and creates metadata classes that provide information about all the managed entities and persistence. And then those classes are then available at runtime, and there's an API you can use to access all that information. So all the metadata about what your entities are, what their fields are, all that kind of stuff. This was originally used or created for use in the criteria query API, which is part of Jakarta persistence. But in Jakarta persistence 3.2, it makes it a lot more useful. And the way it does that is all your meta model classes, which I'll show a very simple example. They now contain public static final constants with the names of all the entity fields, all your name queries, name graphs, all sorts of stuff. And the nice thing about that is, since these contests exist and they're part of the compiled code of your application, you can then reference those things in your code, and then you have nice type safe references to all your queries and all your attribute names, all those things. So you can have a lot more type safety in your application. So a very simple example. So imagine you have an entity called a book. I believe JPA folks, or Gavin at least, always tends to use book in their examples, and I've stolen this from him. So you have a book entity, and one of the things associated with the entity has a named query. So a JPQL query that's been configured using the name query annotation, and it's called by title. So it allows you to search books by title. Okay. Then you use the static meta model generator when you build your application, and the result of that is you end up with a class called book underscore. That's the way JPA creates these meta model classes. So you have that class too. And now there's going to be a constant within that book class that you can point to that points to your name query. And the effect of this is now you can easily execute your query and get a type safe result. So here we have entity manager create query, then the meta model book underscore class by title, which is a reference to the query, and tell the entity manager to create the query, execute it, and boom, I get back a list of books. Okay, very simple, very type safe. You know you're going to get books. You're not going to get a list of something else. Your query is validated. All very nice and powerful and easy to use. Beyond that, there's a ton of other enhancements in JPQL. I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but there's better syntax or simpler syntax for queries with a single entity. If people use Hibernate APIs directly as opposed to using JPA, this is very familiar. Basically, some of the more convenient syntax from Hibernate is not part of the spec. Similarly, there's some Hibernate concepts, union, intersect, and accept concepts that are now part of JPQL, and so they're now part of the spec. So an example, select name from a person, and then union, select name from organization. That's convenient. There's the ability to more, I'll call it ad hoc joins, but it may be a better way to explain that little example there. So I want from the author A, I want to join customer C on the author name. Okay. Then the author name is actually a full name, first name space last name. But here in my join, I can say, okay, first, the author name is equal to the customer first name, which is an independent field, concatenated with a space, concatenated with the customer last name. So it's a more powerful join. You can now join fields that use two different formats for representing data. There's a bunch of new functions. So you can cast something to a type. So you can cast an example below. I'm casting a value to an integer. There's left and right, which allows you to extract a certain number of digits from a field. So in the example below, I want the left 2 digits. So I'm taking the left 2 digits from a file name and casting it to an integer. Okay, is a way to find data. There's also better sorting. You can do lowercase and uppercase of data. You can also include information about how you want to handle nulls. So an example below, I'm trying to sort by lowercase title, and I'm saying if there is no title, then I want those records first, okay? or last. You can also say last. So a lot of new things in JPQL. Okay, where we are in WildFly, similar to concurrency. We expose the persistent 3.2 API, but at this point, we're still providing the 3.1 implementation, which is ORM 6.6. I expect this will be the same for WildFly 35 because it's only a couple more weeks before we do the beta. But our goal is definitely to provide Hibernate ORM 7, which there is, I believe, at least an alpha, maybe a beta out there, to provide that in WildFly 36. WildFly preview, at least. Okay, next, the new specification, Jakarta data. What this does, it brings the repository pattern to Jakarta. The repository pattern, at least, is well known via Spring Data. I believe it has existence outside of Spring Data, but that's one well-known place where people might have experienced the repository pattern. And basically what a repository is, well, at least in Jakarta data, the application developer defines a repository simply by providing an interface that's been annotated with the @repository annotation. And what the interface is all about is it declares methods that are meant to be used for data retrieval, reading data or modification of one or more entity types, okay? So basically, you can just define the interface and all the methods that you want to use in your application related to data retrieval and modification for a set of entities. You can all have in that one interface, and then your application code can just work with that interface. And then what happens behind the scenes is the Jakarta data provider, in our case, that would be Hibernate ORM, provides the implementation of the repository interface. And that implementation knows how to connect to a backend data store, and in our case, being a relational database. In theory, it can be things like Jakarta NoSQL Store too, if your provider supports that kind of thing, which ours doesn't, by the way. We support relational databases. And basically, the provider provides the implementation of the repository interface that knows how to implement all your methods to properly, retrieve and store your data. So a basic example of a repository, you can see it's a very simple interface. The methods can be called for anything you want. So this part of the example is just a bunch of CRUD methods for inserting, deleting, updating entities. You can see here, there's actually this interface works with 2 different entities, which is a nice thing in Jakarta data that I don't believe is possible in Spring data. I'm not sure, but I don't believe so, that a repository can work with more than one entity type. And you have nice natural methods that make sense for your code. I want to add a book to my collection, my library collection, and remove it. I'm adding new authors, nice, easy to understand information. But more interesting is the ability to actually access data, which is more powerful. So first example here, we have a find method, which is, basically I want to find a particular book. And what I do is I provide a parameter called ISBN, which matches the name of a field and a primary key in the book entity. And then the implementation knows how to do a query to find by ISBN, and we'll return you the book. You can do a lot more complicated things though, books by title. Here, what this example does, it uses the Hibernate pattern annotation, which results in a like query. So what all this ends up doing is a find books with a title like the past in title that have a given category, which is an enum used in my in the book. So that's just an enum class that defines a category. And then there's a couple Jakarta data interfaces that you provide in. One is an order that basically provides a mechanism for you to control the ordering of the results, and then a limit interface, which from Jakarta data that allows you to control how many results are returned. So a very simple method you can create, and then boom, you can very easily call this method and get a bunch of books. Similarly, you can use the @query method, and you can actually provide the JPQL query. Oh, there's an example there too. So this is a very simple and easy way to work with data. You can just simply, you're going to have a generated method, and you can invoke these methods from your application, and behind the scenes, Hibernate will do all the work for you. Now, the way this works, as I mentioned, we use Hibernate data repositories, which is part of our ORM 6.6 as our Jakarta data implementation. The way it works is that, again, it uses an annotation processor, which is a, well, in the example show, it's a Maven plugin that basically, or a Maven plugin uses that it can scan annotations in your application, and based on that, find the information and generate your repository interface. And and the interface is basically created as part of your application build. So for this to work, you have to add the processor to your POM, which I'll show on the next slide. And you also have to include a dependency in your application on the Hibernate core artifact, because the interface implementation it generates is going to, depend on Hibernate core classes. So a simple example of that, annotation, this is an example. I'm not going to go through all this, but this is what it looks like to turn on an annotation processor in a Maven build. You add a new plugin, the Maven, or not a new plugin, but you configure the Maven compiler plugin to use an annotation processor. That's what this is showing. And it's the Hibernate ORM JPA model gen artifact is what the annotation processor you need to add. So currently in WildFly, WildFly Preview provides support for this at the preview stability level. You can use the Jakarta Data Galleon layer, or if you're just you're not using Galleon to Slim, you can just add the extension in the subsystem. There's no configuration required beyond adding the extension in the subsystem, and you can use Jakarta Data. I would like to be able to bring this into standard WildFly 35 also at preview stability. It can work fine in an EE10 environment. It doesn't have any dependencies on EE11 at all. So if that's possible, it'd be great. I'm not sure if it will be possible, but we'll try. And then my goal is we'll bring this up to community stability in WildFly 36. Okay, I'm not going to talk. This next slide is basically a lot of background information. If people look at the slide deck, there's lots of links to all the specification change logs. So there's a bunch of other specs that have relatively minor changes, small bits and pieces added here or there. I'm not going to go through all these. I will mention that Servlet 6.1 in Servlet input stream and output stream, you now have support for byte buffers. So you can work directly with byte buffers as opposed to byte arrays. Beyond that, I'm not going to talk too much about all these, but people are welcome to click on the links and get all sorts of information about the details. Okay, so where are we in WildFly? So WildFly support for 11. So currently it's only in WildFly preview. In preview 34, we expose nearly all the E11 APIs to application code. There's a couple authentication and Jakarta pages that we don't expose. We still expose the E10 APIs for various minor technical reasons. WildFly preview also for the E11 core profile, all those specifications. So CDI and REST, those are the two biggest, most famous ones. We provide backend implementations that are E11 implementations. So we're providing Weld and REST Easy that are E11 implementations. But there's still a significant number of web profile and full profile specifications where our backing implementations are still the E11 variants. So I've listed those. I already mentioned concurrency and persistence are in this category. So a task for us is to bring in the new versions of those implementations. So the roadmap for that, WildFly 35, which is going to have a beta in December, and then our final release in mid-January, or I believe January 9th is when it will be out. That's going to be much the same as WildFly 34, I expect. But for WildFly 36, WildFly Preview 36 in April, we're aiming definitely to have all the E11 implementations integrated by then. Hopefully, we'll also be able to bring them all into standard WildFly 36, and then we'll be able to provide an EE11 compatible variant in WildFly 36 in April. But we'll see if that can be done. If not, I'm sure it'll be able to be done in WildFly 37. In the past, for example, when we brought in EE10, we feature boxed standard WildFly, and what that basically means is we deferred doing a release for a long period of time until we could have all of EE10 done. So we stopped doing quarter releases for a long period, I believe over a year, and then we released WildFly 27 that had EE10 support. But we're not planning to do that with EE11. It shouldn't be necessary to do that. Basically, completing it in standard WildFly, should fit within a quarter release, and we'll move to it when it's ready for us to fit into a release. So hopefully 36 and maybe 37. People attended the mini conference earlier this spring, or if you read the slides from that, these next couple slides are from then repeated. What we're planning to do and looking to do is basically produce parallel feature packs for standard WildFly. One that provides the E10 APIs and the other provides E11. So when standard WildFly provides E11, there'll also still be an alternative way to get the E10 APIs. And basically the use case for this is, if you have a user and they want to keep up with standard WildFly, it's important to keep up with WildFly. That's how you get bug fixes released. That's how you get CV fixes. That's how you get various other features. But it's a big change to adapt to a new Jakarta EE version, and they want more than one quarter to do that. They want our longer time period. So by providing the E10 variant of standard WildFly for a while, that will provide a longer time for people to migrate to E11 from 10. Again, the caveats for this, the E10 variant, we can only provide that as long as we have, maintained components that are all, at an acceptable quality level. And that basically means they don't have critical bugs in them that we can't get fixed from whatever that, component release stream is. And you don't have, in particular, high importance CVEs that can't be fixed. So we'll provide an E10 variant, but, once we get to a point where we have problems like that in some of our components and we can't ship a quality feature pack anymore, then that's at the point we'll drop it. So people thinking of using dual support, again, think of it in terms of once WildFly moves to E11, this buys you an extra quarter or two for your transition. It's not intended to be a long-term support thing in community WildFly. All right. At this point, I'm welcome. I certainly, that's all the slides. You've heard me talk a lot. I promise next time I do one of these talks, I'll pick a smaller topic so I can do demos instead of having to present so much information. But this time, lots of information. So I'm happy to take questions. And also, just so you're aware, there's links there in the slide to threads to ask further questions and to the technology interest survey. So
hi, Brian. Yeah, I'm back on too. So we have had some interaction in the YouTube chat about your talk. There was a question that was answered by James. So the question was, does it mean everything EJB related will get thrown out? And James had answered, no, EJBs are under a different spec, Jakarta Enterprise Beans. There was something that was not answered. That was a wonder if Delta Spike data can be replaced with a new data API repository pattern, like persist and update. I don't know if that's something you can comment on at all, Brian.
Unfortunately not. I'm not familiar enough in detail with the Delta Spike stuff to be able to say, but I definitely, it sounds like something reasonable though, to at least investigate.
Okay.
I encourage whoever asked that, maybe that's a good thing to ask in the Zulip chat, because you might get a better answer. Let me put it that way, because there might be more people that are aware of Zulip or in Zulip that are not on the live stream who might be able to provide feedback. People who aren't, participating in the conference right now.
Well, yeah. I will just answer the point that you're making about the Zulip chat. On the YouTube chat, we had some difficulty with sharing links, and now we're getting a lot of links put into the chat. So people have to kind of look through the chat for the most appropriate link. Sorry about that. It wasn't working in the expected way, but hopefully people can, take a look. So yeah, that's there will be a number of Zulip chat links that have just gone in to the chat of YouTube. But anyway, yeah. So I guess if there's no other questions, then I just would state to people to please keep an eye on WildFly preview over the coming months as we work towards completing our EE11 integration. Feedback from our community is so important. So please, if you see something that's something that's possible, like that we can make things work easier or better, then your feedback would be greatly appreciated. And in terms of the WildFly technology interest survey that Brian shared at the start of the presentation, please keep an eye out for that and fill it in, and that would be much appreciated as well. I'll have another quick look on the YouTube chat. No, just these links. So yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. I'll invite you to go off stream now. We're going to have a short break, so I'm also going to go off stream. We'll be back on the hour in UTC time. So at UTC, that'll be 4 p.m. So that's just over 15 minutes. Might be here a minute or two before just to welcome you in, but yeah, got it. But the next talk should be around 4 p.m. UTC plus 0. So thank you very much and see you shortly. So we'll be starting again very shortly. So welcome back to the second half of today's mini conference. Yeah, the links for all the feedback sessions and all of the the links to share feedback on all of the sessions and links to discuss the topics that we are speaking about today are all in the should all be in the live chat in the YouTube chat. So just have a look through those and hopefully you'll find the right ones. I'm going to invite Romain to join me on stream. I can see he's on camera, so we'll hopefully have us both on.
Hopefully it will work.
So hopefully that's been done. So yeah, welcome on stream, Romain.
Hey.
Hey, I'm pleased to be able to welcome you back for a follow-up. For people that were joined us last time, you probably will remember that Romain presented a topic on Ansible back then, and here will be demoing a neat integration between Ansible, the automation tool, and our open source Jakarta EE server WildFly. Understand that today you'll not only be talking about automation in its kind of purest sense, but also how you can have an automated remediation strategy too, thanks to event-driven Ansible. So looking forward to hearing about that. I will let you know about any questions, but it's over to you. Thank you.
Cool. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully it will work. I'm always very nervous with this kind of stuff. Whoops. So normally you should see my slide deck. Yes, this is my slide deck. So like last time I used terminal-based slide deck technology. So if you happen to follow my talk last time, it's going to pick up very much where we left off, but don't worry if you didn't see my talk last time, you can see it again on YouTube, but like I will catch you up, so you don't need to have seen it before. Before we start, a few words about me, because I'm a very egocentric person. So I'm working in open source for all my career. I basically started in 2005 with open source technology, and we are now almost 20 years later on, and I'm still doing open source. I work for Red Hat in 2011. I work in the JBoss ecosystem since 2005, which means that I started actually my career with JBoss AS 3.25. So like, before WildFly, before JBoss EAP, like when it was just JBoss AS. I'm passionate about, of course, Java, but Linux and automation since 2011. I actually started with Puppet, and I did some very cool stuff with Puppet back in 2011, where we were automating the rebuilding of the entire IT system of the startup I was working for. We basically rebuilt everything in the morning. So imagine that everything on the cloud, and at 8 o'clock in the evening, we teared down all the machines, everything was destroyed, deleted, and in the morning, we boot up everything again, and everything was automated by Puppet. However, Puppet had many issues, stuff that I really hated. So when Red Hat bought Ansible, I looked at Ansible and I was like, oh, it's perfect. It's Puppet without the bad part. And this is why since 2019, I'm leading an initiative inside Red Hat called, we nicknamed that Red Hat Runtime for Ansible. It's basically about integrating the Java product of Red Hat into Ansible. So the upstream part of that is called Ansible middleware. You have the link over there, so you can go check out. Basically, we are creating extension for Ansible, so Ansible can interact with the Java product like if they were like native into Ansible. So we do that for WildFly, we do that for JBoss Web Server, so the Apache Tomcat we produced. We do that for Kafka, we do that for InfiniSpan, Keycloak, and I'm QBroker, but I forgot the upstream of QBroker. And anyway, we do that for those products. And we also saw those upstream projects, but they have all the extension we created have a downstream version for the product. So if you are Red Hat customer and you use EAP and not WildFly, then you have the collection for you. So those extensions are called collection. So if you hear me say collection, I am not saying connection, I'm saying collection, and I'm actually meaning an extension for Ansible, so that it's clear for you. Something is awry with my slide deck. Up. Better like that. Okay, so let's start. Just to catch you up, last time what I showed you was how to use Ansible to automate the deployment of WildFly. The presentation was about you work every day with WildFly, and there is a new version because Brian did a release, and you're like, oh, I don't want to reinstall my server every time. And I was like, hey, just write a playbook that does that, so you can just fetch a new version and run your playbook, and you're good to go. Just to give you an example of the syntax of I think the stream is cutting a bit the top of my terminal. No, that's good. That's just my screen. Okay. So as I was saying, this is a simple example to get you used to the syntax. As you can see, it's pretty simple to understand, even if you don't know Ansible. It's not using code; it's using YAML. And it's basically a description of the states you want your server to be in. So in this example, this playbook, this recipe for Ansible is saying, hey, I want to install on my local system, so the same system on which Ansible is running. I want to install in this system, I want to install SSH, my SSH server. So the first thing that Ansible will do here, can I do that? I think you can see it on the screen. Here, it's going to check that the package for OpenSSH is installed. If the package is installed, Ansible does nothing. If it's not installed, it's going to install it. Same thing after that. It's going to check that the service is running. So if the service is already running, Ansible does nothing. If it's not running, it's starting it. So this is very much like you have to understand the playbooks are basically state machine, and they're just like, checking it at each step that every component you have configured is in the state it should be. So if a file needs to be there, the file needs to be there. If the file needs to be deleted, it's removing it, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay, anyway, we'll do a demo, so that will be clear in 2 minutes. Okay, so first of all, I'm sorry, the demo. What we're going to do is install on a local container. I'm just using a container, but it could be done on a VM or something else. We are going to install WildFly using Ansible. That's just to bootstrap the demo of today. So first of all, just to show you that I'm not lying, I have no WildFly service running on this system, or at least there is no system this service called WildFly, and my OPT folder is empty. Okay, so I'm going to fire a playbook designed to install WildFly. Just one command. No, before I do that, I need to show you the playbook, because otherwise it's going to be interesting for you guys. So here is the playbook. It's a bit more complicated than the previous one, but basically here I am saying this playbook is using the collection for middleware automation WildFly, so the extension for Ansible we created to help with WildFly. Then roles basically means, okay, I need to use pre-packaged playbooks inside the collection. And the WildFly install role, for instance, is taking care of downloading WildFly, creating the user and groups, installing the dependency, like the JVM and stuff. And that's what the WildFly install is doing. And the second role, called WildFly system, which is going to be executed afterward, is taking care of integrating WildFly as a systemd services. So at the end of this playbook, hopefully, if I do a systemctl status WildFly, I will get some kind of answer. So as you can see, you can configure the playbook. So I have configured a couple of things. I put the version. Actually, the latest version of the collection is already installing WildFly 34, but just for the sake of saying that you can put the collection. I have disabled Prospero just because zip file is a bit easier for this demo. And some other stuff. In this case, just to gain, because the demo needs to be a bit fast, I have pre-installed the packages because it always takes a bit of time, so I'm skipping this phase. And more importantly, here I am providing the Ansible a couple of one EAP application that needs to be deployed on top of one WildFly application that needs to be deployed on top of the server. As I work a lot for EAPs, the downstream version of WildFly, I tend to mix them. So if you ever see me hear me again say EAP, just translate it to WildFly. This is something we're going to see later on. So last part is that task is basically when the playbook itself starts. Everything like before task, the role are executed, but at this point we do more stuff than the provided role. In this case, just as a demonstration, we also install a WildFly driver, WildFly JDBC driver. So if you are familiar with that, you know that to install the WildFly GDBC driver, you need to create a module, you need to create subdirectories, you need to put a jar in the right place or whatever. This is what this role does. So you can just say, hey, I need this version of the jar of the driver, and just run the playbook, and Ansible will build everything for you. So let's word more demo. So here I am. I'm providing the playbook with a file called inventory. This file contains just one entry telling the Ansible that the system Ansible needs to manage is the localhost. So the container is running. Okay, let's go. Yeah, as you can see, it's going quite fast because a lot of preconditions are already replied. So a lot of stuff that the playbook is doing is just checking that everything is in order, and most of the stuff is already in order. It's so fast I can't make any comment, but it's very important. So as you can see, there is a couple of orange things, and the orange things is telling you that Ansible did a change on the machine. So the last thing that Ansible did was, of course, deploying the GDBC driver. This is why it was part of this is what I showed in the playbook. And at the very end, so Ansible realized during it was a change that actually, because it installed WildFly, you need to change the status of the service called WildFly. And at the end of the playbook, Ansible has started the service. So now if I do the same command I did 2 minutes ago, now I have a WildFly server. It's great. Look, WildFly 34, great. And if I do an LSOPT, you can see I have stuff in my server. So basically, the entire automation, the entire installation was automated. That's very interesting. We saw that last time, just to catch you up and have a base for my lab. Coming back to my stat very quickly. I forgot to fill that. Anyway, so now we're going to go a bit further down. We're going to use something else than just not Ansible, something called event-driven Ansible. And the funny thing, you're going to see that in a few minutes, is that event-driven Ansible is not so much out of place in a WildFly conferences, but no spoiler. Anyway, what we have right now, thanks to Ansible, is basically an automation infrastructure. We have somewhere an Ansible controller, which can run playbook, and it's going to connect to the machine we want to run, and it's going to keep this machine in a good state. And the idea is like, well, maybe we could use this infrastructure that is already in place and kind of enhance it so it can react to events instead of actively connecting to system to know what's happening. So instead of running the playbook constantly, you could imagine a system where the playbook, like there is a monitoring system on the playbook, like on any event generated by a target node can be intercepted by the playbook. That's basically what event-driven Ansible is all about. So at this point, I need to switch to the demo. So I'm going to do a simple demo of how Ansible event-driven Ansible or EDA works by just implementing a very simple use case. Let's imagine that for some reason our WildFly server is done. We want it to be automatically restarted. So we are going to write a playbook for that. A role book. I'm going to do this mistake a couple more times during the presentation. So we're going to write a rule book. And this rule book, hopefully, I think you can see it too. Yeah, it's readable. So this rule book is using is basically what Ansible, event-driven Ansible is using as an equivalent of a playbook for event-driven Ansible. So again, it's a very simple syntax. Basically, there is two concepts in a rule book. It's sources. So where do I fetch events? Like it's an event-driven technology, so it needs to fetch events, and rules. What do I do with the events? Like, how do I react to the events? So we are using only one sources, a very simple one, which is basically a URL. We could provide several ones, but we use a URL by default of WildFly, and we just say, okay, like monitor that. And if this is the second part, if there is an event coming up that the server that this URL is no longer accessible, then we are going to restart WildFly. For the sake of showing you everything, I'm going to show you the content of the restart WildFly playbook. Okay, so we just call the primitive from Ansible called service, and we say there is a service called WildFly. Please restart it. Not rocket science. Huh? Okay, let's demo that now. So, no, big mistake, Romain. Rulebook. Then I provide the same inventory as before. I'm making it verbose for you to have some stuff to see, because otherwise it's just going to start a daemon. And I'm passing the first rulebook as I just show you. And I did a mistake. Yeah, I always forget that there is a -r here, because rulebook take a -r. So this is a part where you should be amused, or you can be amused, because you can notice that here, oh, but that's Java stuff. There is a jar here. Yes, because inside event-driven Ansible, there is Drool, the rule engine from the GBoss community. So I'm guessing many people on this call are familiar with rules, and yes, it's using Drool. So we have a Python project having a Python extension which internally use a Java product. So I know, I find that a bit cute. Anyway, now it's running. So now I'm going to show you that it's working by doing what I just said. I'm going to kill the WildFly systemd services. Up, WildFly. Boom. So I have killed the service. And just to show you that it's dead, I'm going to do a status. It's disabled. And now I go back to the, it's already started. I go back to the EDA, and you can see that EDA saw something like, oh, wait a minute, like this event, this server is done. I'm going to restart it. So if I go back to my terminal, and if I run status again, now it's up. Okay, so that's a very simple use case of how to react to an event. However, there is 10,000 technologies to do that. Like I know Monit, for instance, there is many, like I think systemd naturally can do that. You have that configuration for systemd to say, okay, if it's not running, restart it. We are going to look at a far more interesting topic. So if you have been doing Java technology for, let's say, more than the last 2 or 5 years, you most likely have run a lot in your life into Java out of memory error. I mean, maybe you also run into them in the last year, but I feel this is less a problem than it was at some point. And historically, the Java apps have been often plagued by that. And quite often, once an application gets to a point where there was a Java out of memory error, kind of the only way to fix that was to restart or reboot the application or reboot the server running the application. So we are going to use EDA to implement this, what I call a remediation strategy, saying, okay, we have a problem, let's remediate to the problem by doing something. So back to the terminal, killing this rule book, looking at another one. Second rule book for today. This rule book is called OOM, out of memory error. Oh, I forgot to show something, but yeah, something important. I will show you that later on. Yeah, as I was saying, again, something in EDA, 2 concepts, sources, rules. Sources, we use now no longer a URL, but we use a very cool sources called journald. So if you're not familiar with Linux system, journald is kind of a service tied to systemd, which is centralizing logs. It has other purposes, but for the purpose of this example, let's see it as a centralizer of log. And because the collection for WildFly is integrating WildFly into systemd, the log of WildFly are also directly available through systemd. So we can use this plugin for EDA to monitor errors or like logs event coming into the journald system. And in this case, we are going to react to another different kind of events, saying, okay, if there is a message coming in the log, and this message contains Java long out of memory error, please do something. In this case, we're going to call the playbook called OOM. Do note that I have set the in your case to false, because we really want to catch this kind of Java error and not maybe some other error that will also have an out of memory with a different case. Same thing, for the sake of showing you everything, I'm going to show you the playbook OOM. It's basically the same thing as last time, except that to demo you how the event arrive on the EDA side, I have added a debug statement. Okay, so now the question is, how do I trigger out of memory error in my app? Well, first of all, I'm going to show you, that's what I forgot earlier, that the app is actually deployed and working. I wanted to show you that after the installation. So if I do that, you can see that, oh, hello world, I have an app called EDA app. Well, EDA, whatever. And this app is basically doing stupid stuff for me for this demo. And the main point is right now is that it's been deployed, it's running, and it has been installed by Ansible. So let's now use the hidden feature of this app. I have a REST endpoint called OOM, which gave me the great pleasure of triggering an out-of-memory error in my application. Java heap space. It was quick, huh? Now, yeah, okay. I forgot something very important. First, I need to fire EDA. Let's fire EDA. Up. Here it is. So again, starting again, putting itself in waiting mode, parse the rules. I use a rule book. I use a rule book. So let's go again in this other terminal. Let's do my my curl statements. Boom, Java X space. Let's come back to the EDA. It's so quick today. Normally there is a few, like, of course, when I did the demo this morning, there was a few seconds of delay between, like, you know, when I trigger the thing and it was reacting, and of course now during the demo it's super fast. But as you can see, this was the error message log picked up in the log. So basically, one of the log of journal D had this entry saying Java long out of memory error, restart WildFly. That's still pretty cool. I find it pretty cool. I think that, I mean, I don't know for you guys, but I do remember a couple of people, like customer I have worked from Red Hat, but also enterprise I've worked before Red Hat, where, you know, having some kind of, hey, let's restart when this is running out of memory would have been nice. Anyway, let's go a bit deeper, because again, that actually restarting is again of a kind of an easy case. And let's imagine an app which has a bug that basically leads to DB connection to end up being idled. You don't really know why. Like, you figure this out, it's in production. The dev team is looking into it. It's not clear. Might be the DDC driver, might be some weird framework they're using. Obviously, if this is if they're going to file a bug to Red Hat, it's going to be because of GBOS fault, because it's always GBOS fault until it's not. And basically, they're all at this point, and you're like, yeah, but now those idle connections, they're annoying me in production. Like, I have issue regularly. So let's do a cool thing. Let's detect those idle connection and react to it. And whenever we find some, we just connect to the WildFly server, and we flush the idle connection. So let's look at the playbook. Let's look at the rule book. This is the third rule book. And it's basically the same strategy as before. As you can see, we have, again, I'm just for the sake of being like you know, pedagogic, again, sources rule. We again use the sources for journal D. What we're going to do this time is detect this string, so pull error timeout while waiting on idle object. So I have created in my super ED app, there is a rest point, a one-line rest point, basically throwing this kind of exception. It's going to end up into the journal D. As last time, I also set the ignore case to false. That's the right sense to false, yeah. To make it right. And of course, I need to show you the flush DB. This is the most important and interesting thing. So I have a flush DB, and actually, let me do it a bit early. I'm going to close this one. Yeah. So this is a playbook that's going to be triggered whenever we picked up on an idle connection on the server. In this, the interesting part is that here again we use the WildFly collection, so the extension of the extension for Ansible to catch WildFly. And in this collection, we are using a provided role. We have inside the WildFly collection, we have GBOS CLI, like, you know, on the book, so you can very easily use that to fire a CLI command. The playbook is coming with all the right default, and because Ansible is connecting over SSH to the target node, we don't need to figure out, like, what's the IP address of the server having an issue, which port, blah, blah. No. Like, Ansible is going directly to connect over there and run the CLI directly on the target server. So it also gives us the advantages that basically we can figure out the address for the server. It's going to be localhost, and it's going to use default port. We can configure that, of course, if your environment is different, but by default, it's all taken care of. It also have a nice advantages that I'm pretty sure there is production environment that does not allow people to connect directly to the WildFly instance remotely. Like, the port is not open, but most likely you can always SSH into the machine. Ansible use that, and then Ansible can SSH for you in the machine and run the CLI. So we have basically called this simple. We have made this simple CLI query. We go to the data source subsystem. We look for the DS, in this case example DS, and we just flush the idle connection. Okay. Again, I'm going to show you the result so that you can see a bit something. So there is also a task to print the result. Okay. Let's fire again EDA. Boom. EDA starting, this rule on everything, perfect. Let's go back here. Let's check that my server is still running. I think it is, but we never know. Still running, very fine. And now I'm going to call the super cool functionality of idle pool. So this functionality is going to trigger this exception I just showed you. And this is going to land in the log, and then EDA is going to pick it up. As you can see, JavaSQL exception cannot get a connection. I just throw the exception, which has a nice benefit of just having that as a return value for the curl statement. And if I go back here, it's already gone. So you can see that EDA triggered the playbook. Then the playbook executed this query over there, and this query like result return with like a success outcome. So my English is broken today. You already had earlier you had Jean-François giving you one blend of English, French in English, and I'm giving you another one, but I don't know which one of version is more broken. Anyway, here it has flushed the idle connection pool. So every connection that was idle has been flushed, and now the application can keep running smoothly. And just to stress it out, without any human intervention, like you wrote this whole book, your environment is being managed by Ansible, and if this is happening, it's picked up, boom, fire the flush, nothing to do. I find it pretty cool. I don't know if you do find it cool, but you know, I remember a use case at either at customer or enterprise I work for where I would have loved to have this kind of strategy in place. Okay, that being said, one more example, because you know, for the sake of being complete. So this is a kind of a weird case. Basically, we have an app that can be broken at some point. Again, we don't know why, but at some point it's broken, and like we know that when it's broken, it's no longer responding and stuff like that. And so we need to have this app entirely removed, because actually in this use case, we are using the WildFly application server for what it was designed, because we actually use it to host several applications. So it feels a bit stupid to have an app consuming resources and memory and not being able to be used. So your team has decided to implement a strategy where when the app is broken, you actively, thanks to a playbook, you actively remove the app from the running server, and you also remove it from the load balancer. This way, the instance that was running this app disappear, and from now on, the load balancer will only dispatch the request over the other instances that are actually still working. Obviously, I have not set up a load balancer, so I will not demo the load balancer part, but you can imagine that the advantages of using Ansible is that Ansible can integrate with a lot of other products, like you can use Nginx or whatever. So interacting through Ansible with a load balancer, whatever the technology is very easy. So it's giving you an easy way to bridge from, oh, I have a Java issue inside my Java server and blah, to this need to be fixed by the overall infrastructure. I think this is all you have to say for that. Let's go over there. First of all, I'm going to show you the rulebook. Last one for today. Again, not very complicated rulebook. I'm again using the Journal D feature. It's actually a very cool. It's not like there is some other sources you can use. There is some watchdogs. There is some integration with Azure. I think that's actually pretty cool. I don't know anything about Azure, but I'm guessing being able to plug yourself in the Azure bus to get event is very cool for a very cool feature of EDA. So there is like 5 or 6 sources. You can of course extend and create your own sources. Maybe if I had a bit more time, I would have done that to kind of create like a sources specific to WildFly. But anyway, I'm using again the Journal D sources. Very funny stuff. It's a very recent feature, this Journal D sources. So if you go right now on the Ansible, so event-driven Ansible website, listing the sources, you will not see it. It's in the code. You can GitHub and you can find the documentation in the code, but it's not yet on the website. It will be at some point soon. Okay, anyway, in this case, same strategy. If I find the message EDA app is broken, I'm going to react to it and fire the broken playbook. Let's look at the broken playbook. Up. So this one is shorter because in this context, we are doing things a bit differently. What we are doing now is that we are going to create our own playbook. We're going to say, okay, I basically need to change the set of WildFly. So I'm going to take the demo playbook that I've run at the beginning and rerun it completely, this playbook, except that now I'm going to pass it a variable to say like previously you were installed using EDA app, and now you have to remove, like the EDA app is not there, it has to be removed. So I'm basically passing an empty array for the list of applications to be deployed on WildFly. Now coming back to the playbook, you remember there was this mysterious line here where I was telling you that we're going to talk at the end. This is now the end. So this is why we're talking about that. This is just a pre-task. This is executed before the role are called, and this pre-task is just going to say, okay, if there is already a WildFly instance running, I'm going to undeploy apps or some apps on it. So let's look at the secondary playbook for that. So we have a block basically saying, so the block is a way to do a if statement if you want. So block when, if WildFly app is smaller than 1, meaning the array is empty, then execute that. And this is what we have created. But in the first playbook I showed you, by passing an empty array, this is what we created, an empty array for the apps. And if WildFly apps is empty, then I'm going to fire this CLI command, and I'm going to remove the broken app. Oh, I hope I tested that. I have a bad feeling about something. I'm not sure I valorized somewhere broken app. Let me check that. Playbook. I was doing not the demo one. This is broken. Ah, yes, broken up is here. Okay, I was bad memory. Perfect. So now again, we fire the rulebook as I've done 6 times by now. Up. Always putting you a -v. Yeah, I wanted to point it out. You can see that I'm firing the rulebook using the same inventory file as the playbook, which is, in this case, this inventory file is kind of emulating the common automation infrastructure. Of course, in a real production environment, you might be running something called Ansible Tower, which is like a complex web UI where you can monitor your own infrastructure. It's basically sitting on top of Ansible. The product version is called Ansible Automation Platform, AAP. And anyway, you have this big like controller checking your own infrastructure, and this controller have notion of inventory. And here, because I'm doing a command line demo for simplicity's sake to just show you how it's working, well, I'm passing that as the inventory file. Okay, but so the main point being that both Ansible, the Ansible rulebook command and the Ansible playbook command are using the same inventory. Here we are, rulebook number 4, firing. I have done again mistake. Oh, same mistake as last time. -R, up. Again, firing, starting the rules, and now we have EDA running, and we just need to go back to my second terminal, and now we are going to check that. We're going to see how to block the app. So first of all, again, in the context of this like use case, as I told you, your team figured out that the app is sometimes broken, and what the development team did for the next cycle is that, okay, we don't know why it's getting broken, but we know how to detect that it's broken. So the server team created some kind of else check command. So if I run that, the app is okay, and if the app gets broken, this will return EDA app is broken. So how to do that? I'm going to call a service which is going to break my app. So let's break it. I think it's broken if I'm right now. Yeah. So now my app should be broken. It is. If I go there, it's too fast again. So it has already picked up on the fact that the app is broken, and it fires the entire playbook. So the entire playbook is being run, except that this time, at the end of the playbook, my EDA app will be removed because it's broken. Let me find. Well, actually, now I can kill it off. So let's check that the server system is still running. So obviously it is, but just for the sake of the demo, the server is still running. There was some error when it started, but it's still running. And if I do the curl HTTP host to connect to my app. I actually plan to put that in my. I kept that in my copy and paste queue for a reason. So if I do that, the app is no longer found. It has been removed. Okay, I'm not super happy about this demo, but like removing an app is kind of a weird use case. I actually thought this morning that I should have rather do like the whole removing from like deploying a load balancer and having the playbook removing it from the load balancer. I just, I got the idea a bit late. Anyway, I hope it was still interesting regardless. So now we have actually a few minutes for some question and answer if you have any question. And hopefully I was not too quick. I tend to speak quickly. So if there was some part that was confusing, now is the time to ask for clarification. And that it was interesting. So just let me know. Do we have any question, Tom, somewhere?
We don't have any questions in the YouTube chat. That was very cool what you shared. The out of memory thing, was with the ability to detect that was very interesting, and yeah, there's a lot. It just shows some of the flexibility and power of Ansible in combination with this the integration with WildFly. So yeah, I hope that people that joined the session today like the demo. I'm sure that if they have any questions that come to mind after, they can reach out to you or someone else from the Ansible middleware community on GitHub. I guess you'll be ready. I hope you'll be ready and waiting for any questions or feedback or feature requests even. So
yeah, so we're actually super looking at feature requests because we have been doing that for a while, and on the WildFly front, I won't say that the extension is like feature complete, but like the main thing I wanted to see in the collection are here, and this is now giving us a bit of leeway to say like, oh, if you have some special kind of case, like, oh, in our organization we are deploying WildFly like that, and we can't do this because that because with Ansible because that is missing. This is definitely some stuff we would like to look at. So we are super interested by any kind of feature request or just problem, like hey, we have this problem, and do you think we could solve that by automation? And well, scenario one will tell you like, yes, you can use Ansible and like do that. On scenario 2, we'll say, oh, let's see if we can fix that in the collection for WildFly. So feel free to ping us, as Tom said, on the Ansible middleware organization, or ping me by email, or I'm not super often on Zulip, but I am easy to reach anyway.
And in terms of like the demo that you ran, if someone wanted to try that themselves at home or office or whatever, what's
it's already on GitHub. Let me push you the link. I have published it just before the demo. If I put where can I put it? No, I can't put link in the chat.
Yeah, maybe we'll update the description after the event or something with a link to these kind of things, because we are having difficulty getting links in the chat. So we'll try and get a link in the chat or in the description after the event. But yeah, I think like that's one of those things that's quite good for people that are interested to be able to kind of execute it themselves to see, just how it really does work in practice.
It's so the instruction to run the demo are in the repo and stuff. What you need is basically a system with ADA running. I used a container which is a UBI container for that. It's a Podman image, but like it should not be too difficult to make that run on Fedora or any kind of Linux stuff. Technically, it should also work on Windows, but I have never managed to make anything work on Windows in my entire career, so I will not commit to a statement like that. But this is just my personal issue with Windows. But yeah, it's so if you happen to have like some rel subscription, it's super easy to reproduce on either a container or a VM. If you don't have a Red Hat Enterprise Linux system, you just need to tweak a bit for it to work on Fedora. That's cool.
Well, thank you very much again. Anyway, so okay, well, we are probably going to leave it there with Romain then. So thank you. I'll invite you to disconnect your video and screen share. Our next lightning talk is for Remediation and Flavia. I think yes, they both like to be here and ready, so that's great. Cool. So just yeah, we're all on stream as well, so that's good. So Ranabir and Flavia are going to talk to us about how the WildFly community is participating in open source events and just give people an impression of some of the activities that we're doing there and how you can make a meaningful impact yourselves through events that we have like Hacktoberfest and Open Source Day. So yeah, I'll hand it over to you both and then I'll go stream. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for the great introduction. And good evening, good afternoon, or according to your time zone, whatever you feel right. So Roman's talk was really fantastic, and we got to know more about event-driven Ansible and Ansible Middleware Initiative. As being a part of Ansible Middleware Initiative myself, I can strongly suggest it's a really great project which helps to perform installation, configuration, management for the middleware products. You can also find various other collections like WildFly, Keycloak, or JWS, others as well. So I will highly suggest to check out their repository and ansiblemidleware.com to get a better understanding. But moreover that, do you also know that Ansible Middleware was a part of the Hacktoberfest this year under the WildFly project hood? So everyone as a part of WildFly community, we participated in Hacktoberfest and Open Source Day this year to help the open source contributors to engage with WildFly projects. And I also heard great news from everyone. And also Flavia, I heard that this year you also took part of the Grasshopper Open Source Day celebration. So how was it, and how was the experience about it? Can you please tell us all about that?
It was a great experience. So it was the first time that I participated in this kind of event. And by the way, I was not the only project from the WildFly community that participated. Farah also participated with Electron, and we had several contributors from Red Hat participating in both open source initiatives. So the event takes place during the entire day, and you have several rooms where people just split, and there are several options, different options for the attendees to pick whatever project they feel more inclined to contributing and to learn more about. And it's interesting because we start introducing the project from the basic stuff, like how to contribute your pull request, what is this project about, etc. And we start building on top of that, how you find good first issues, how you engage with us. And by the way, the Grasshopper celebration is a conference for the goal of the conference is increasing the representativity of women and non-binary people in the tech field, because as you know, we are underrepresented. So it was super great experience to connect with other people like me that want to work in the tech field, and many of them are just starting their career. I've been working with tech like for more than a decade, so it was super interesting to be able to share that experience with them and to provide the first steps. But we don't have only people who are just starting their careers. We have people that are also seasoned contributors, and they have just like decades as well in their own careers path. So it was a really good and rich mix and match of people, and everyone trying to learn something new and contribute with new stuff, and that was great.
Yeah, I also seen several of the articles about the participation, and it was great. It looks nice to me as well. And yeah, so probably we'll have a recap of article this year as well. So probably that will be great too. And that was really great, Clavia. And before I talk about that and Hacktoberfest participation, I just want to give a small summary about what Hacktoberfest really is. Hacktoberfest is basically a month-long event during the month of October, and that encourages open source contributors, developers all over the world to give back to the tech community. And it's a fantastic opportunity for new contributors as well as the seasoned contributors, developers to showcase their skill and get to know about open source communities. And we have started Hacktober projects from like it's been 3 years. We started with 2 projects and it's now 11 projects in 2024, and it was a great success for us. Even participation has been increasing, and it's increased a lot. Even every year, like before October comes, we publish one article about Hacktoberfest with all the details, the links about the good first issues, everything. And we share the article in our social media platforms. And I will highly encourage or suggest you to go through that in order to get an overall idea about the projects that are participating. And you can also check out the contribution guide as well as the good first issues link, which you think would be good for you to contribute. And if you are non-techie, then don't worry. There are several other documentation issues as well, which you can pick up as you want. And so everyone is highly welcome to contribute. And we also have a Zulip chat room for the contributors to discuss about it for the Hacktoberfest specifically. And I'll try to ping the chat room link in the in the YouTube channel, so probably everyone can be check that out. Next year also we are planning to participate in more of the open source events, so probably it will be a great thing for us. So hope for the best. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, so October was a very busy month for us, right, in terms of events. It was also my first participation in the Hacktoberfest with the Undertow project, that I'm the technical lead of the project. And it was super great experience. By the way, I learned a lot. So some things like making, I don't know, pointers clearer in the Jira issues that we create. These things that normally we don't stop to think about because usually we are just creating Jiras for ourselves to work on them. So suddenly you start getting a different perspective, and even that was enriching. And another thing that was really cool about it, and this is something that was true not only for the Hacktoberfest but also for the GHC Open Source Day as well, is that it allowed us to kick off some initiatives in Undertow in terms of improving tasks or updating some things that are outdated or things that are not very consistent in the code. So we created good first issues for them, and we got the contributions, and that was great by itself. But not only that, we will continue that effort because now the effort has started. So we want to complete it and make sure that the code is consistently updated in those fronts that we picked as good first issues. So it was a very nice experience overall. And I think that events like this, they have they end up serving multiple goals. So for example, you can think, for example, Hacktoberfest is obviously to enrich all the open source projects and strengthen the communities. But when you're participating in those events, you're learning something new. You're connecting with other people, and many times people that share the same interest as you, and that's great. And it can help you boost your career, and learn something new. And you can approach it with different mindsets. For example, you can try to find projects that are related to things that you do in the daily basis of your work or things that you really like, or you can just simply pick something that you're not very familiar with and try to learn something about the project. And that's also a very nice experience. So for example, as Ranabir mentioned, you can provide contributions as well in terms of documentation. So the simple act of reading the contributor's guide and reading documentation, and maybe you find something that doesn't look very well, very nice, and you can contribute it with them. But we also have good first issues related to documentations, as many of the projects participating. So it was a very nice experience, and definitely I'm looking forward to participating next year as well, hopefully in both events as well as other events as we see them and get the opportunity for participating in them. But do you know what else? Sorry to interrupt you, Ranabir. I was just going to mention the other talk on GHC. So you were asking Farah, by the way, about the post that she did on the LinkedIn for the talk that we have in GHC, right?
Yeah, right. I actually pinged him. So we actually have some links. Probably we'll share those links after the call get finished, and probably you guys can visit that, and you guys can see how we did the contribution from our side, and how you can also participate in the same way. And also we have also told this right thing, that it not only serves the contribution part, but it's also serves a bigger thing. So not only you are contributing to WildFly in a sense, but you also get to know how can contribute to open source community as well, and it can actually boost your career in that way as well. So not only in a sense you are restricted to open source issues or good first issues, but if you want, you can also go through the repository, learn more about it, just go through the documentation as well. And if you feel there are some things needed to be done, and there are some feature requests probably you think might help us, then probably you can raise an issue and probably you can work on it. That also serves a bigger picture.
Exactly. And by the way, that reminds me of the WildFly RFE process that has been revamped over the last months. And now it's even easier for you to find a way to start contributing if you want something like a new feature, not only bug fixes, but I would like that WildFly would do X, Y, and Z. And you can propose that, and we can forward you to having that feature in the project, regardless of how much you're willing to contribute. So even contributing with the idea itself is also a great opportunity. But one thing that I was going to mention, is still going back to the GHC topic, is that me and Farah, we did this talk about, the title was Open Source Software, the Not So Secret Weapon. You didn't know you needed. So it was really interesting as well, because it aligns to all this topic of working in open source projects and strengthening communities and learning new things as you go and making contacts. So it was really nice as well to do that talk in the conference. I participated this year. It was the first time that I participated in the conference in my career. And I participated only in the virtual conference. So I did not have the experience of being there. And I think that it should be a very nice experience as well, being there and getting in touch personally with everyone. But it was also great to participate virtually. Not only getting in touch with them, with the attendants during my session, as well as attending other sessions and in the coffee breaks that were virtual. But particularly talking about the session that me and Farah, we did in the conference, it was nice because we were able to show others the story of our careers. So each one of us have different stories and backgrounds in our careers, but we were able to show how it was great to find a community where we could contribute to and learn new things, and how that impacted our careers in each one of us in her own way, right? So this is what these events are all about as well. So I can definitely see a correlation between the topic of the talk and all these events, and it's a great opportunity. If you're looking to boost your career, learn something new, get in touch with an open source software. So get in touch with us at the WildFly community in Zulip. And I have to say that the WildFly community is very open to all contributions, and I feel very welcome in there. I never felt like, okay, I am a minority, so I won't be well accepted. You are valued for your ideas, and everyone can contribute and learn together. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, that's true. And even if you think apart from Hacktoberfest and Open Source Day, there are any other open source initiative that we should be a part of, then you can actually ping us or probably write down in the YouTube live chat so that we can look into it and we can be a part of it as well. So it's not only about us, it's about you guys as well. So we are not about only it's WildFly community, so it's a open source community, so we are with everyone else. So you are happy, we will be very happy if you guys contribute in any sense of way.
That's true. So it was great getting in touch with everyone here. You can follow up on the subject with us in the Zulip thread that we created, and that's linked here in the YouTube and in the comments in the chat. And yes, I hope you can follow up in there as well and get in touch with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you very much, both. We're having difficulty with getting the comments directly into the chat, but hopefully we will be able to add those in soon. Let me try to pin. Cool. So yeah, we're our next speaker will be Emmanuel. I can see Emmanuel's here with me, so that's good. Emmanuel's been experimenting on providing an easy way to bring generative AI into applications that use WildFly, and he's going to give us the current status of that research. So that's great. Emmanuel, have you got a presentation to share?
Sharing it. Okay. Should we wait a bit to start on time, or?
No, yeah, we can wait a bit to start on time. We'll not go too early on this one. So yeah, it's fine. We'll just start a little bit closer anyway to the time. We'll just take this chance then just to mention again to people that in the YouTube chat you'll hopefully find a lot of links to provide feedback on today's sessions, and I'll recap that again after Emmanuel's finished. But yeah, we welcome all feedback, and you know, the input will help us to make sure that these events are the things that our community want to hear. Okay, so I think we're kind of close enough now, Emmanuel. So I think you can probably make a start, and I'll hand it over to you. But thank you very much.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. So let's start doing AI with WildFly. So basically, the idea behind this is there's been a lot of buzz around generative AI, and we wanted to look how we could use that and provide it for developers to enhance the applications with generative AI on WildFly. Okay, so we are going to make, so the idea is to bring together generative AI and Jakarta EE, and to provide generative AI as a tool that is available through some kind of Jakarta EE specification. Currently, we are going to use CDI to expose generative AI to your application. So a quick recap on what are so generative AI is about large language model or small language model, depending on whether you want to run it on your laptop or if you have a large model provider. So they rely on neural network using transformers, and they can recognize, predict, and generate text. They are trained on a very large, there's the name, corpus of text, and they have some kind of statistical relationship between tokens. I would say tokens are, let's say, words, to define, to recognize and predict and generate text. They're using those statistics, and they can be fine-tuned, but currently I won't use any fine-tuned model, just those that are currently available. So basically what it does is predict the next token based on the previous one and statistic that is trained with. And one of the big things that comes through that is what we call RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Because the issue is that a generic model is something that is being trained with data, but you have to provide it with enough context, and sometimes with data that is more relevant to your use case. So basically, docs about your product, or emails, or other data such as, I don't know, knowledge base, issues, fixes, stuff like that. So the idea is to reuse all this data that you already have to provide context to the LLM. And that way, the answer from the LLM will be more related to your use case. The RAG is in two parts. One which is ingestion. So ingestions, as it says, is it takes your document and is going to cut them into small pieces that they call segments. And then of those pieces, we will create what we call embeddings. So embeddings basically is a vector with a dimension that might vary depending on the algorithm you are using to create them. But it's a semantic vector and we will index all those text segments with those vectors, and that we will use them for the search to search the relevant content that we will provide to the LLM. All those index and segments are stored in what we call an embedding store. There are a lot of them, and currently we provide. I will talk about it later. And then the next step is the interaction with the user. So basically, the user is creating a query. From that query, we will create an embedding, and we will use that to select the content that are relevant for this query. So we can see that you have the embedding store again, and get your relevant segment, and then this query plus those relevant segments will make it the effective query we will send to the LLM to get the answer from. And that's RAG in a few words. And so until now, generative AI was usually thought as a Python application. And how we met it is that we are going to use Java and LangChain4j, which is a framework that I would say provides an abstraction on top of the different providers. I would say kind of GDBC abstraction over the LLMs inferers, and we will be able to use it to access OpenAI, Olama on different Azure AI and different providers. So just to explain a bit, because those are the elements that we will see in the integration, is that so Longchain4j has basic elements which provides what they call models, so language and image models, which are the way to send data to an exchange with the LLM. Prompt is the prompt template is what we'll use to provide context of the static context and put all the elements together when we are sending the query to the LLM. And then it provides also tools for RAG, so that would be the splitters to split the documents and to create the embeddings and store them into embedding store using so embedding models to compute the embeddings, and also of course a way to query those embedding stores based on the query from the user. And it provides also higher level elements. One which is tools. Tools is the concept of the fact that LLM is a fixed trained set of data. So, for example, it doesn't know the time it is currently. And for those kinds of tasks, you might want to provide it with a way to have to call a function from yourself or from some other provider that will answer that kind of questions. So this is what we call tools, and there is a way that we can provide those tools and tell the LLM about it. And AI service is an abstraction provided through Longchain4j that will combine together all the elements to provide an easy way for you to define a service that will interact with the LLM. And we'll see that in the demo. So here is some example on how this is defined in terms of WildFly configuration. So in that case, for example, I was adding a chat language model, so something to interact with a chat part of the LLM served by Olama. And I'm specifying which model I want to use on Olama, which will be Llama 3.1 with billion parameters, the base URL, and temperature, which is, let's say, something about how much creativity I want from the model. So this is how I can add it, and then I will be able to use it in my application in the same way that I'm using the data source. And this is just to read to do a read resource on it. And that's the result in a WildFly configuration. So we have a dedicated subsystem, which is called AI, to be very creative. It provides a way to create several chat language models. So you can interact with Olama or different Olama inferers, or you could, of course, add. So we support OpenAI API. So that means OpenAI itself, but also stuff like GrokQ and others. Also Olama and Mistral. And then you can have embedding models. So those, in that case, we are using the old mini LM L6v2, which is a very small, I think it's BERT like model that you can use. So it's used in memory in that case. You could, of course, use OpenAI to provide the embeddings to you instead of this one. So in that case, it runs into the GVM, and you can have several ones depending on the language you want to interact with. So you provide, I think, provide like 6 embedding different in-memory embedding models, and we provide us a way to use Ollama as an embedding model provider. And last but not least, we have the embedding store, so where we want to store the embeddings. For demo purpose, we can use a JSON file, which is, well, very limited, but which is what we are going to use in our case. That's what we have here, but we also provide a way to store the embeddings and search for them in Neo4j and in Aviate store. And the last one is the embedding store content retriever. So as its name states, it connects to an embedding store with an embedding model, and will retrieve, so will fetch the relevant content based on the query. It has to use the same embedding model as the one that was used to create the embedding content when we ingest them. To put it all together, so this is what I would say a basic RAG application could look like in our case. So all those elements that I've just defined here are available through CDI. So you can just use @inject and @name and use the name of the resource as a key, and it will be injected to you. So in our case, I just want to have a content retriever because I just need to be able to query it and then it will be sent to to the LLM. So just to show you, yeah. So yeah, I'm creating the code retriever augmenter. So that's something. The augmenter is what is going to get the content and provide the prompt. So as you can see, you only use the retriever as defined just there, and the prompt is defined here as a static string with the templating language. So that's what we can do. Another way to do it is to do what we call AI services. So for that, I'm using small YLLM, which is providing, which is something that we have been working on, which is providing the CDI extension to define a proxy class on top of this interface. So here we have just a simple interface that is annotated. Oh, the annotation, sorry, the annotation is missing here, but I will show you it later. I think that's, yeah. Sorry, that was sorry. That's the end of the previous. There's a mistake on my slide. But, this is so sorry. So this is the content retriever, and here we have a chain where we will interact with Ollama, which is injected here, and send the query to it with the content that we obtained from previous one. So let's see a demo for that. So here I have a simple web chat application, which has the code that I've just talked about. So it's very basic, and it's a Maven application, and it will provision a Wi-Fi server with the AI feature pack. So just to show you, sorry, I forgot to open my PS Code. And I can show it to you. So that's the code I was just talking about. So in our case, we're going to use Mistral because Olama is very slow, as I don't have a GPU on my machine. And you can see here we have the content retriever that we just saw, and the chat model is Mistral. That is basically the same thing. Here we are creating the augmentor, which it's just you're reusing the same code that you just see, and here is the code that is going to code it. So let me show you. Yeah. So we have a page here. Oh, sorry, forgot to start the server. So I'm just loading the server just built. You can see here that we are using the small Y LLM Launch4j portable extension, and here we are. So this is a very simple chatbot application that is using WebSocket. So we need first to open a WebSocket to WildFly, and let's ask it. So it's going to. So what I did is I ingested WildFly admin guide as a JSON file that I'm using here to get some pertinent content and send it to my Mistral LLM, get back the answer and display it. So here is it. So I asked it how to create a connection factory to a remote Artemis broker. That's because, well, you know, I also work on Artemis. And here is the answer that I'm getting back from Mistral. So I need to create an outbound socket binding. And so you can see here it is. The host is not defined. I should, well, maybe put something here, but in our case, I need to provide something for the host and create the connector to that using that socket binding and create a pull connection factory with that connector and a GND name here. And even provide me with all a scenario effect. Yeah, so it is this code that is being used. Okay, as you can see, yeah, it's the WebSocket chatbot is being called. This is what is done. Also, what I can show you now is how to use AI services. So I have a very simple for this page. What I can do is ask about the best sci-fi movie. And AI, I've got a simple basic answer from the LLM about sci-fi movies. But let's say I want the weather in Paris, France. As you can see, it gave me some weather. Well, in that case, what is doing is it's calling a tool of mine, because of course the LLM can't know the current weather in Paris, France, right? So it's calling back a tool of mine that will generate a current weather. So here I'm going to show you first. So this tool, which is here. So this is what we saw here in the. You can see that is my tool that is being called. So that's the answer that the tool is doing, and here is the code of the tool, which is basically creating random ints and putting them in the answer. And here is the service that we are calling. So this is all the code I need to write to do these interactions we have just seen. So I want to connect to a chat language Mistral. That's the name we have defined. And I'm using those tools, so I have tried to use several different tools. In that case, it's weather that will provide the weather, and just a prompt. So that's the system message, and it is I'm annotating with user message the question. So it will send all this to Mistral, and Mistral will detect that it is something that requires a call of a tool that is described here. Okay, you want the weather, and I don't have it, so I'm going to call your tool that says it can provide the weather. And if we look into, let me see. Oh, I don't have File Explorer. Okay, I'm going to, sorry, AI for a chat. And here, if we look into like that, into the log. Yeah, no, just see, you can just see that. What I can do now is, okay, we have everything working, and what we want is to do the same thing with Olama. So just to show you, because Olama is very slow, so I'm going to start Olama here, and I'm going to select Llama 3.2 3 billion, because I have a small laptop. So that is just to be on Olama. And what I need here, so I just switch on the main branch, which is by default on Olama. And I will just export Olama. Oh, sorry. Just have to move that a bit because it's on. Why don't? Okay. So it is. Yeah. I've just exported the Olama model name. So now if I just rebuild it, the configuration will be updated because I'm provisioning now with a different player, one which is dedicated to Olama and not to Mistral. So if I restart it, oh, right, restart new. Oh, out of memory, sorry. Okay. Here now we are interacting with Olama. So if I open the connection, ask the same question, you can see that it's taking a lot more time. And we can see here on the server log, the interaction. So for example, I'm asking Olama with that question, and you can see all the contents that have been added to it. Yeah. You can see it takes quite some time. And in the meanwhile, what I can do is show you the code that I use to create the embedding store. So that's what I call is a crawler, which I think, as you can see, is getting data from WildFly.org and admin book, and then is splitting them into blocks of, I would say, about 500 tokens, and storing them and computing using the embedding model, compute the embeddings, and then store them to the embedding store, which in our case is a simple file. You can see this is the same using VV8. The only difference being how you can create, or the embedding store is created, but the code is the same. And here, for example, for Neo4j, in the same way, you are creating a Neo4j embedding store and providing it here. So, we get the answer, and if you go here, we got the answer that you get back from Olama, which is quite different because it tries to edit the XML as opposed to executing the JavaScript commands. So I think that because of the XML, we have some kind of display issue here. Maybe got this. If you look, oh yeah, sorry, but that's the basic idea here that we want to do. And I go back to here. You can see that the same answer that was, I would say, almost spontaneous from Mr. is taking a while here just to get. And I think that's mostly it. I've provided a few links. One was you can see the actual code of the feature pack. One about the blog entry I wrote a few days ago on providing us what we have seen here. The code to the web chat application, to the ingester application, a link to Launch4j and small LLM, and to Olama if you want to have it locally. I guess that's all of it. And if you have any questions, I can happily answer now or on the.
Hi, Emmanuel. So there hasn't been any questions that went into the chat, actually. There was definitely, well, there was a question, but it wasn't a technical one, debating whether Star Wars was really science fiction. I think that was one of the answers from your chat bot interaction. And some people may take issue with, possibly take issue with some of the other suggestions. But anyway, there wasn't a question in the chat about how it works or anything like that. So I think it would be in the chat earlier today. Hopefully, people will be able to find a link to. You know, if they have feedback or just want to keep up to date on what you've been up to, then there is a link for Emmanuel's. There should be a link for Emmanuel's Zulip thread in the YouTube chat from earlier today. But yeah, it was. Thank you very much for doing the demo. And I think with the demo, by the way, and I'm not asking you to like look at it now because we could find. You know, like hunting around, but I think I noticed it said out of memory somewhere in one of the log files. So I don't know if that was like something you were expecting. But anyway, I'll let you look when you're not on stream. Yeah, so thank you for the demo, and thank you very much for presenting. So I'll invite you to stop sharing your screen now, and yeah, thank you. I'll unpin you from the call if I can. I don't know. Okay, so I'll just pin me for everyone, and I will also just pin my slide deck again. Well, not pin it. I think if I share it, it'll be good enough. Yes. Second, sorry. So, yeah, there weren't any outstanding questions from the chat. So for now, if anyone does have any more questions, then obviously they're more than welcome to use one of those links that were provided into the chat to provide, to follow up with any more questions they have after the call. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all our presenters that have prepared all the content for us today that they shared with us. So thank you again to Harold, Brian, Romain, Emmanuel, who were our presenters of our core topics. And then thank you again to Jean-Francois, Ranabir, and Flavia for speaking on their lightning talk sessions. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the organizers of the event today, and a lot of hard work's gone into making the event a success, and I'm very grateful to our behind the scenes team for their contributions to making this a successful event. So that's saying to organizers and people that have been helping out, anyone that's helped out today with actually running the event. So the last thing really in terms of thanks is for people like the members of our community that have joined us today. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us and come and listen to what we've got to say. And I look forward to hearing any feedback you've got in any of the feedback forms that we have provided. I haven't got any more questions in the chat. So I think with that said, we're going to finish just a little bit early today. But thank you very much, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you at a future WildFly conference next year. But yeah, thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and finish now. Thank you.